War does not begin with the first arrow. It begins in hallways, in half-whispered promises, in the dry mouth of a king who cannot sleep, and in the clenched hands of princes who have waited too long to be patient. For 13 years the fire was banked. Now the ash is splitting. The exile is over. The vows are awake. And for 5 long months, the whole world stands with its breath caught, pretending there is still time. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're walking through a royal compound after sunset. The stone under your feet still holds the day's heat. Oil lamps tremble in brass bowls along the walls. Their flames bend and recover as servants pass in a hurry with lowered heads. You smell ghee, warm cotton, old sandalwood, and beneath it, all the sharper smell of horse sweat drifting in from the stables. Somewhere in the dark, a conch sounds once. Not for battle, not yet. Just enough to remind everyone that battle has begun to think about them. You move past carved doors of salwood and black iron. Behind one, old men are still awake. Their voices are low, grave, careful. Behind another, younger men speak over maps spread on the floor, with pebbles and ivory pieces marking chariots, elephant lines, river crossings. Everyone is discussing peace with the intense concentration of men also counting arrows. This is Kurukshetra before the first arrow. Nothing has happened. Everything has happened. The sons of Pandu have finished the long exile. They have endured the forest, the disguises, the waiting, the swallowing of rage. So often, it has become almost a second diet. The year in concealment has passed without breaking. The pledge is complete. The debt should now be paid. But Hastinapura is still holding what it took, and so the roads begin to fill. You can hear it before dawn if you stand near the outer gates. Wheels groan in, harness bells shaking, messengers arriving with dust on their hair and cracked lips, couriers leaving before they have fully eaten, kings remembering old alliances, uncles, in-laws, friends of friends, rivals who suddenly become useful. The whole land begins leaning one way or another, like tall grass under a changing wind. Upaplavya stirs. Virata's city, so recently bright with wedding garlands and festive drums, now changes its face. The flowers are still there in some courtyards, drying at the edges, but fresh ropes are being tied. More pavilions are raised, storehouses open, scribes sit cross-legged with palm leaf bundles, counting grain, counting spearheads, counting how many proud monarchs can be fed without offending them. Feeding one king is hospitality. Feeding 20 on the eve of a world-ending war is an advanced spiritual discipline. You pass a kitchen yard and feel the heat from great clay ovens on your face. Cooks are already muttering, rice in baskets, lentils in sacks, ghee in sealed jars, fires built before sunrise, huge bronze pots blackened at the base, boys carrying water with their shoulders tilted under the weight. Someone is grinding spices. Someone else is cursing an elephant for eating like an elephant, which is accurate, but not especially useful. In the halls beyond, the great ones gather. Yudhishthira sits with that stillness of his, as if patience itself has put on white cloth and taken a human shape. Bhima is not still. Bhima is never really still. Even seated, he seems like a storm, instructed to use indoor manners. Arjuna watches and listens with that deep, dangerous calm of a warrior whose hands do not need to move much to change the world. Nakula and Sahadeva stand close. Draupadi is there too, and memory enters the room with her like perfume and flame. No one has forgotten the dice hole. No one has forgotten silk dragged across polished floor, laughter in the wrong mouths, silence in the wrong ones. And yet peace is still spoken of. That sweetness and strain hangs over every chamber. Every chamber holds two truths at once. Offer peace, prepare for war, send messengers, yoke the horses, speak softly to elders, inspect the armor straps, ask for what is rightfully yours. Count the armies gathering past the horizon. You move now to Virata's assembly. The torches burn high. Gold catches the light on bracelets, sword hilts, crown edges, drinking cups left untouched because the talk has become too serious for thirst. Krishna is there, dark and luminous, carrying the still center of a storm not yet broken. Balarama too, broad and fair, urging careful speech, respectful appeal. A path of diplomacy that bends before elders and asks without provoking. Then Satyaki, fierce as a drawn bow, can barely keep from leaping up at the thought of pleading with men who cheated and sneered and called it lawful. The air grows thick. No one in that hall is foolish enough to mistake courtesy for safety. Drupada speaks with cold clarity. Send an envoy, yes. Try peace, yes. But do not wait empty-handed, while hope is dressed and perfumed. Let the world see who asks fairly and who refuses. Let time be used. Let alliances ripen. Let truth walk into every court before armies do. So that is what begins. Embassies, recruitment, preparation. And on the other side, in Hastinapura, pride sits upright and well-fed. You can feel the difference as soon as you enter that city. The avenues are broad, the walls high, the palace polished so smooth that lamplight lies across the stone like still water. Incense curls from shrines in the inner courtyards. Fine cloth screens stir in the warm night breeze, but beneath the fragrance is the scent of anxiety, thin and metallic, like rain thinking about coming. Dhritarashtra sits in darkness deeper than the room around him. He listens for footsteps, for pauses, for the slight changes in a servant's breathing when news is bad and everyone is too afraid to speak first. His fingers tighten on carved armrests. He knows more than he admits, less than he should have. Sleep slips away from him, night after night. Vidura walks these corridors like a lamp that refuses to go out. He speaks plainly, again and again. His words fall into royal chambers already crowded with excuses. Bhishma knows, Drona knows, the elders know. The kingdom has become a place where wise men sigh, agree, and then somehow fail to prevent anything at all. It is the ancient palace version of seeing storm clouds, discussing storm clouds, praising caution, and then leaving all the windows open. And Duryodhana grows harder. You can almost hear it, like lacquer drying, like metal cooling in a mold. He moves through the palace with confidence sharpened to a point. The kingdom is in his hand. He does not intend to loosen one finger, not for justice, not for memory, not for kinship, not even for 5 villages when that request finally comes, small as a begging bowl and heavy as a mountain. Far away, kings set out on the roads, standards rise. Salya of Madra travels with a mighty host, meaning well, and is met not by battle but by luxury. Rest houses appear along his route. Fine food, cool water, garlands, cushions, music. every comfort laid out so lavishly that even suspicion has to sit down for a moment and admire the upholstery. He assumes one set of hands arranged it. Another set steps forward, smiling. By the time the trick is visible, honor has already closed around him like a knot. So the days move forward, not only with swords, with banquets, with courtesies, with obligations placed as carefully as traps. Soon you will ride the roads to Dwaraka. Soon you will stand in a chamber where Krishna sleeps while two rivals wait for him to wake. One near his head, one at his feet, both hoping destiny has good manners. Soon you will enter Hastinapura with envoys and hear appeals made one last time. Soon you will sit in the great assembly when peace is offered until there is almost nothing left to ask for. But not yet. For now, stay in the long inhale. Walk these torchlit passages. Listen to sandals brushing stone. Hear armor being fitted in the next courtyard over. Hear priests reciting at dawn. Hear horses stamping in their lines, annoyed at history for disturbing their dinner. Smell jasmine from a balcony garden mixing with leather, hot dust, and lamp smoke. Look up. The night sky over the royal compounds is wide and watchful. Omens are beginning to stir at the edges of things. Birds call at odd hours. Jackals cry where they should not. Men glance upward and then quickly back to their duties, as if a full-grain ledger might somehow argue with the heavens. For 5 months, Bharat waits. Kings speak of peace and summon troops. Mothers pray. Counselors warn. Messengers ride until their horses foam and tremble. And all the while, beyond the courtyards and councils and polished halls, Kurukshetra lies open under the sun, patient and empty, waiting for standards, wheels, and the weight of vows fulfilled. Too late. Come closer. The lamps are still burning. The doors are not yet closed, and the last chances have only just begun. The exile is over, but peace does not return with it. Instead, the roads begin to fill with riders, wagons, and kings remembering old debts. At first, it is only a few riders, dusty men on quick horses, a banner rolled tight against the wind, a courier with a wax-sealed message tucked into his sash, riding as if the fate of kingdoms can be outrun by a determined mare. Then more wheels on the roads of Matsya, more hoofbeats at dawn, more servants hurrying with water jars, fodder, blankets, writing boards, bundles of arrows, sacks of grain. The quiet after exile does not last even a little. It breaks apart under practical needs. You feel it in Upaplavya before you understand it. The city changes smell first. Fresh-cut bamboo, oiled leather, horse sweat warming in the sun, rice boiling in huge bronze pots, ghee smoke lifting from cook fires, sandalwood from the chambers where kings are received, wet clay where new tent posts are driven into the ground. Every courtyard seems too small, every stable seems too full, every room meant for discussion becomes a war room by accident. The sons of Pandu are not wandering now, they are planted. That alone changes the air. After years in forests, caves, borrowed shelters, disguises, and hidden names, they stand openly beneath their own banners. Men can find them. Allies can come to them. Old loyalties, which had been sleeping like coiled snakes in winter stone, begin to move. Upaplavya swells around them. Virata gives them space, honor, and the strength of his kingdom. Drupada's people move in and out with grave efficiency. Satyaki arrives shining with restless energy, like a man who has been waiting for years to stop being polite. Priests come, captains come, messenger after messenger bows receives instructions, and flies back out through the gates. And through all of it, one question keeps circling the halls like a hawk that refuses to land. Can a kingdom be restored without blood? Yudhishthira behaves as if the answer might still be yes. That is not weakness. Standing near him, you can feel how difficult it is. He sits in council on low cushions spread over cool floors, his face composed, his hands quiet on his knees. Brass lamps burn steadily beside him. Outside, parrots screech in the palace gardens, as if they object to politics on principle. Men come to him full of heat, and he answers with patience that does not feel soft so much as carefully harnessed. He reminds everyone of the terms fulfilled. The 13 years are done. The forest years are done. The hidden year is done. The promises made before the assembled court have ripened fully. Nothing remains unpaid on the Pandavas' side. They ask only for what is theirs. He says it plainly, return the kingdom. If not the whole kingdom, then a just portion. If not the ancestral capital, then enough land to rule without dishonor. He is still willing to speak of peace. You can almost hear the effort it costs him. Because peace in that city is no longer a soft word. It drags chains behind it. It has to pass through memory first, and memory is sitting nearby with unbound hair in the inward chambers. Draupadi does not interrupt the councils every hour. She does not need to. Her silence moves through Upaplavya like incense through cloth. It gets into everything. Sometimes you catch sight of her crossing a shaded passage, attended by women from Panchala and Matsya. Gold at her wrists, dark hair heavy down her back, her face calm in the way a lamp flame is calm, too steady, too bright at the center. Men lower their eyes when she passes because they remember the dice hall. They remember a queen, dragged where no queen should be dragged. They remember cloth, laughter, shame, elders frozen in place. No one has to explain why Bhima's jaw tightens when her name comes up. No one has to explain why Arjuna grows still. No one has to explain why Yudhishthira asks for peace as if handling a sword by the blade. The city fills anyway. One morning, you wake before sunrise to the long cry of Conches from different quarters, each answering another. Not war yet, arrival, a king from one direction, a prince from another, some mountain chief with a troop of men wearing fur even in the heat, because apparently discomfort is part of the costume. The eastern gate groans open, then the western, then the southern. Upaplavya begins receiving the world. You stand in a courtyard when the first great line of elephants comes in. Their foreheads are painted, bells hang from their necks, their mahouts mutter to them constantly because a war elephant is majestic, yes, but also one bad mood away from redecorating the entire kingdom. The ground trembles under their feet. Children run to see them until their mothers snatch them back. Behind them come cavalry squadrons, dust-coated and proud. Behind them, chariots with spare axles tied underneath. Behind them, cooks, armorers, physicians, astrologers, grooms, washermen, banner-bearers, drummers, priests, scribes, and that one extremely offended court poet who clearly expected a private suite and has instead been placed next to the horse lines. War does not arrive alone. It brings an administrative headache large enough to require its own mythology. The practical comedy begins immediately. A righteous war, you discover, still needs lentils. Someone has to count the elephants. Someone always miscounts the elephants. someone else insists that one of those elephants belongs to his king personally and is not to be listed with ordinary elephants, as if the beast itself understands rank. Grain stores are opened, recalculated, and found insufficient by noon. Additional wells are ordered dug. Tents go up so quickly that half the camp looks like a traveling festival, and the other half like an argument between carpenters, and every visiting monarch expects proper honor. Of course he does. This king must be received with garlands, that one with music, this one near the central pavilion, never near that one, because they quarreled over a border 3 harvests ago, and under no circumstances seat those two side by side unless you want the alliance to dissolve over mango pickle. You see harried attendants darting through corridors with lists in their hands and despair in their eyes. One clerk has ink on his nose and the expression of a man who did not deserve this destiny. Another is trying to determine how many carpets are required for 300 visiting nobles, 6 priests, and 1 ascetic who refuses luxury but will absolutely complain if offered torn matting. Meanwhile, the world tilts toward war. Upaplavya manages both facts at once. The halls are rich with movement. Silk brushes stone. Anklets whisper over polished floors. Men with dust on their shoulders bow before princes wearing gems cool as river water. On the verandas, fan-bearers move slow air back and forth while serious men discuss the possible collapse of civilization in tones used for land disputes and marriage settlements. Ancient India had a gift for making catastrophe wait outside while refreshments were served. But beneath the hospitality, the work continues. Messengers go out in waves. They carry invitations, reminders, claims of kinship, old debts gently polished and brought into the light again. Remember who stood with whom. Remember marriages. Remember rescues. Remember promises made after hunts, after sacrifices, after long cups of soma beneath winter stars. Remember who you are bound to. Remember who wronged whom. The Pandavas do not need to invent their case. It already lives in memory across the land. Kings had watched the dice game in horror from afar. Kings had heard of the exile. Kings had heard how the sons of Pandu kept their word. Kings had heard, too, of Duryodhana's confidence growing fat on stolen power. So the roads keep filling. Drupada of Panchala sends his support with the gravity of a man whose daughter was humiliated in open court and has not forgotten a breath of it. Virata's loyalty is warm and immediate. His house has already sheltered the exiles without knowing it. The Vrishnis and Andhakas watch, measure, prepare. In every direction, banners stir. Still Yudhishthira insists that an embassy must be sent. Not one war-hungry fool in that city can accuse him later of lunging too early. That matters. He meets with Krishna, with Virata, with Drupada, with Satyaki, with his brothers. Their counsels stretch deep into evening. Ghee lamps throw amber light over maps, cups of water, bowls of fruit gone untouched. Outside, the smell of night-blooming jasmine drifts over walls, warm from the day's heat. Somewhere far off, a horse stamps and tosses its head against a tether. You are near enough one evening to see how the room arranges itself around the brothers. Yudhishthira at the center, calm and grave. Bhima leaning forward like a storm forced into human shape. Arjuna seated with an odd quiet around him, as if his thoughts move farther than everyone else's. Nakula and Sahadeva listening with that sharp twin attentiveness, one like polished steel, the other like a knife hidden in silk. Krishna there among them, dark, watchful, almost at ease. which somehow makes everyone else more alert. Bhima does not love these long discussions. You can tell by the way his fingers flex against his knees, by the way his shoulders rise whenever peace is mentioned one time too many, by the way he looks toward the door as if perhaps Hastinapura itself might stroll in and save everyone time by standing close enough to strike. He has carried his vows all through exile. He has not set them down. In the forest, he remembered the dice hall. In the caves, he remembered. While sleeping on deerskins, while eating roots, while listening to rain beat the leaves overhead, he remembered. Duryodhana's laughter, Dushasana's hands in Draupadi's hair. The old rage never cooled. It only thickened. Now, with the years completed, Bhima is being told to wait a little longer, speak politely a little longer, invite reason into a house that boarded up its windows years ago. He agrees because Yudhishthira asks it. But it is the agreement of a tiger lying still in grass. Once, in a crowded outer court, he watches a train of supply carts jam the gate entirely, wheel against wheel, drivers shouting, an ox refusing movement on spiritual grounds, a servant dropping a sack of grain and bursting it open across the dust. Bhima stands there with his massive arms folded and an expression that says he would genuinely prefer a battlefield. The absurdity hangs in the hot air. Civilization is hours away from formal collapse, and someone is arguing about sesame inventory. Even Bhima almost laughs. Arjuna is different. His stillness is not passivity. It is tension drawn fine. Men come to him constantly, captains, princes, archers eager to serve beneath him, old friends from training grounds, younger warriors trying not to stare too openly. He receives them with courtesy, but there is always a little distance in his gaze, as if part of him is already standing on another plane, under another sky. You see him in the practice grounds at dawn. The air is cool for once. Dew darkens the earth. The first sun lays gold along the bow staves stacked nearby. He trains without display. No boasting, no crowd-pleasing flourishes, no wasted motion. Arrows leave his hand with a sound like cloth tearing in the wind, one after another, smooth, controlled, mercilessly exact. The watching men murmur anyway. They cannot help it. Arjuna's greatness has the irritating quality of looking effortless while requiring a life built entirely around impossible discipline. A very inconvenient kind of excellence, terrible for morale if you happen to be competing with him. But when training ends, he lowers the bow and turns immediately practical. How many archers from Matsya? How many from Panchala? How quickly can they be supplied with proper strings? Which roads remain usable if the monsoon breaks early? Where will the reserve chariots stand? Arjuna is not daydreaming about glory. He is helping build a machine. So are they all. That is the rhythm of Upaplavya in those days. Hope in one hand, harness buckles in the other. A Brahmana emissary is discussed and prepared. Words are chosen with care. The appeal must be righteous, direct, impossible to dismiss without shame. Let the court of Hastinapura hear it publicly. Let the elders sit under its weight. Let everyone know the sons of Pandu seek peace before they seek battle. That too is part of preparation. Not all weapons shine. Draupadi speaks more rarely than the others, but when she does, the room sharpens. She does not need to remind anyone of what happened. They carry it already. Still, there are moments when the old wound must be named aloud, so no one wraps it in politeness. The dice hall was not a misunderstanding. Her humiliation was not an unfortunate excess. It was the naked shape of adharma in a royal court, and half the kingdom sat breathing while it happened. When she speaks of it, you can feel the heat in the room change. Even the lamps seem to steady themselves. There is no shrillness in her, no loss of control, only memory honed to a terrible clarity. She wants justice, not soothing phrases. She wants the men who swore protection to remember what protection means. Her grief has gone beyond tears. It has become direction. Afterward, the brothers leave quieter than before. Outside, the courtyards go on with their impossible busyness. Potters unload water jars. A farrier hammers at a bent shoe. Cooks squat over giant cauldrons, sweating and cursing in low, respectful tones about princes who eat delicately in public and like wrestlers in private. A priest is trying to find a clean platform for evening rites and discovering that soldiers will put spears absolutely anywhere. You pass rows of tents striped red and gold, blue and white, each marked with signs of a different house. Men oil armor under awnings. Scribes scratch names and numbers onto palm leaves. Boys sent on errands race one another and then suddenly remember they are in the middle of history and try to look solemn. The smell of dust after a brief afternoon shower rises from the ground, sweet and earthy, mixed with wet rope and trampled grass. You hear languages from every direction, accents from the hills, the coasts, the river plains, laughter too. That is the strange thing. People still laugh. A visiting king arrives with twice the servants he announced and 3 times the ego. Another sends ahead a request for particular perfumes in his quarters because apparently one must wage moral war while smelling exactly right. A third insists his astrologer be lodged where the moonlight enters from the east, though the moon, unhelpfully, has its own habits. Attendants bow and rearrange everything. Hospitality in a royal camp is not optional. It is diplomacy wearing flowers. And so Upaplavya performs dignity at a scale bordering on heroic nonsense. The meals alone could feed a small province. Rice mounded high, lentils rich with ghee, vegetables spiced and steaming, milk, curds, honey, flatbreads brushed with butter, plantains, pomegranates, sweet cakes dusted with sugar, water cooled in earthen pots. Betel prepared afterward. Servers move in graceful lines while armed men discuss how many divisions may be needed if peace fails. You sit near an outer pavilion one evening while the sun goes down, red through dust. The visiting kings glow in lamplight and perspire with equal majesty. Gold necklaces stick slightly to damp skin. Fans wave. Bracelets clink against drinking cups. Several men are pretending not to measure one another's military worth while measuring exactly that. A court musician plays softly in the background because apparently, if the world is about to crack, it should do so with proper accompaniment. Then the talk settles, as it always does, around the same central absence. Hastinapura has not yielded. No word of restoration. No sign that Duryodhana has learned humility from prosperity, which perhaps should surprise no one. The elders there may advise. Dhritarashtra may lament. Bhishma may warn. Drona may understand. Vidura may speak with all the force of truth. But Duryodhana is Duryodhana, and everybody in that pavilion knows it. Still, Yudhishthira will not abandon the path of peace first. This becomes the moral discipline of the camp. Prepare everything, sharpen everything, count everyone, remember every wrong, but do not be the one who closes the last door. So the priest is sent. He will go to the Kuru court and speak in full assembly. He will lay out the claim. the kingdom owed, the deceit at dice, the exile completed, the right of the sons of Pandu to their father's inheritance. He will remind them, too, of the power gathering now on both sides, not as a threat thrown wildly, as fact, a clear-eyed measure of what refusal will cost. When the decision is made, there is a strange easing in the camp. Not joy, not relief exactly, direction. Men can endure uncertainty better when it is given a road to travel. The Brahmana departs with blessings. Dust rises around his chariot wheels as he leaves. The dawn air is cool, touched with smoke from sacrificial fires. Priests murmur mantras. Horses snort clouds into the pale morning. The city watches him go. Then the work returns at once. More arrivals, more mustering, more lists. Somewhere in the administrative quarters, a very serious dispute erupts over tent allocation for allied archers from a distant hill kingdom. They refuse to camp near the elephant lines because the elephants keep them awake, which is understandable. The elephant masters refuse to move because their beasts require access to water. Someone proposes staggering the lines. Someone else says this is impossible. A third man, who has not slept enough in days, suggests that if princes would stop arriving with decorative peacocks, there might be room for actual soldiers. He is not wrong. The peacocks stay. Of course they do. By now, Upaplavya gleams by day and throbs by night. Torches burn along avenues of tents. Watchfires pulse red in the darkness. You hear low voices from council pavilions long after midnight. The murmur of strategy never truly stops. Neither does the labor. Armor is repaired by lamplight. Horses are groomed under stars. Water carriers move like ghosts between sleeping lines. Somewhere, a conch sounds the change of watch, long and lonely over the camp. You walk past the brothers' quarters once in the deep night. Bhima is still awake, not pacing, just sitting outside beneath a torch bracket, massive and silent, looking into the courtyard where shadows lie thick between columns. He seems carved from the same darkness, except for the gold edge of firelight along one cheek. Arjuna is wakeful too, though quieter, speaking low with Krishna under the eaves where Jasmine climbs the wall. Yudhishthira remains with his counselors over documents and dispatches because the man apparently believes insomnia can be turned into governance if handled correctly. Nakula has gone to inspect the horse lines himself, which feels exactly right. Sahadeva is with the astrologers and quartermasters, combining stars and storage in a way that would confuse ordinary men and delight him completely. And Draupadi's lamp still burns in an inner chamber. Nobody sleeps properly anymore. That is true of both sides now. You can feel it without seeing the Kuru court. The whole land has entered that restless hour before a storm, when birds fall silent, and even the trees seem to wait. Days pass, then more. Upaplavya settles into a tense grandeur. The courtyards are swept at dawn, sprinkled with water to lay the dust. Fresh flowers hang at gateways, because royal life continues to insist on beauty, even while assembling its own ruin. Priests chant over sacred fires. Armor flashes in the morning sun. The smell of neem smoke drifts through the camp to keep insects away. Blacksmiths work at the edge of the encampment where sparks fly against the dim before sunrise. You stand at a terrace rail one evening and look over it all. Rows of tents, lines of tethered horses, elephants swaying in silhouette, cook fires winking out one by one, standards lifting against a bruised violet sky. The city has become more than a refuge, more than a host's courtesy. It is a hinge, the place where wandering men became claimants again, the place where insult was gathered, weighed, and given form, the place where peace was still offered, though everyone could hear the drums under it now. Below, in a lit pavilion, Yudhishthira receives another king. He rises, embraces him, seats him with honor. Nearby, Bhima talks with warriors who would follow him anywhere. Across the yard, Arjuna checks bows laid out for inspection. Women move through lamp glow in silks, the color of marigolds, and dusk. A servant runs past carrying a tray of spiced milk and nearly collides with a messenger arriving from the road. Nothing stops. That is the pulse of this season. No one can force time backward. No one can unknow the dice hall. No one can make exile unhappen. But in Upaplavya, for these brief strained weeks, the sons of Pandu do something harder than striking. They wait without yielding. They prepare without pretending not to. They gather the world around them and still leave one path open. For now, the doors are not yet shut. The fires are banked, the banners rise, and out on the roads beyond Matsya, more wheels are coming. Soon, every highway, river crossing, and palace gate is busy with the same restless traffic. Men going to decide the fate of the world. You can see it from a rise in the road if you stop long enough. Dust lifting in pale sheets behind chariots. Standards snapping in the hot wind. Couriers bent low over horse necks. Ox carts groaning under trunks of gifts. Bolts of cloth, jars of oil, polished weapons wrapped in felt, and letters sealed with wax and worry. Nobody says they are choosing sides for the end of an age. They say they are visiting cousins, honoring obligations, answering invitations, paying respects. And meanwhile, the roads fill up like monsoon drains. The smell follows you everywhere now. Horse sweat, leather straps warming in the sun, old dust kicked loose from summer-hard ground, and the sour, sweet scent of men traveling too fast to bathe properly. Conches sound at crossings. Gatekeepers squint into sunlight. Scribes mutter over names and escorts and the size of every arriving force, as if neat handwriting might somehow contain what is coming. In Upaplavya, messengers come and go until even the servants stop asking who has arrived and start asking how many came with them. One king sends word with silk and courtesy. Another sends word with drums. A third sends nothing at all, which is its own answer. You stand in a courtyard one late afternoon, while a clerk, sweating through his cotton, tries to keep order as guests are assigned quarters. He has the haunted look of a man who wanted a respectable career in administration and has instead become keeper of a royal storm. Elephants need shade, horses need grain, priests need clean water, kings need reassurance that their honor has been correctly measured in canopy size and mattress thickness. Apocalypse, it turns out, requires excellent hospitality. The Pandavas move through it all with different kinds of stillness. Yudhishthira listens, thanks each envoy, measures every promise. He looks like a man trying to carry a bowl full to the edge without spilling a drop. Bhima is less subtle. He asks how many chariots, how many elephants, how many archers, and whether the ally in question intends to arrive before his grandchildren are old enough to shave. Arjuna says less. He watches. Nakula and Sahadeva remember details no one else catches. Which king's tone was warm, which envoy avoided Bhima's eyes, which promise arrived too quickly and therefore probably has a second edge hidden inside it. And Draupadi, walking once through a shaded passage where the scent of jasmine struggles against lamp smoke, hears every name. Some men come from loyalty, some from shame, some from old affection, some because they remember that day in the assembly hall and would rather not live in a world where that becomes normal. You feel it everywhere, that leaning, the whole land inclining, a little at a time, toward one plane in the north. Somewhere else, in Hastinapura and beyond, Duryodhana is doing exactly the same thing. He's not idle, not for one breath. His messengers are already on the roads, bright with jewels, smooth with compliments, quick with assurances. He knows kings, he knows vanity, he knows the irresistible pull of being courted before disaster. There are rulers who would refuse a threat, perhaps even a bribe, but present them with a pavilion, a feast, musicians, and the flattering suggestion that their decision may swing the balance of the age, and suddenly everyone sits a little straighter. The contest begins long before arrows. It begins at doorways. It begins with who arrives first. Duryodhana understands this so well that he races one dawn toward Dwaraka, toward the sea-washed city of Krishna, with the determination of a man going to claim the best seat in the universe before anyone else finds the hall. You go with him for a while. The road west runs hot and white beneath the horses. Tamarind shade comes thin and brief. Villages stir as the royal convoy passes. Children pointing, dogs barking, old men narrowing their eyes at the banners of Kuru. Duryodhana sits firm in his chariot, jeweled and composed, though he carries impatience like a blade under silk. He wants Krishna's support, and he wants something else too. He wants to say he got there first. That matters to men like him. Perhaps especially to men like him. Far away, almost at the same hour, Arjuna is also on the road to Dwaraka. The difference in mood is almost funny. Duryodhana travels like a claim. Arjuna travels like a prayer with armor on. The sea air reaches him before the city walls do. Salt, wet wind, a faint tang of drying nets mixed with incense from seaside shrines. Dwaraka shines ahead, bright and improbable beside the water, its towers touched with morning light. Gulls wheel overhead with the shameless confidence of creatures who have never had to negotiate inheritance law. By the time both men arrive, Krishna is asleep. And so destiny, for a brief and absurd moment, has to wait outside a bedroom. You are there in the cool chamber. The floor is smooth beneath your feet, almost cold despite the heat beyond the shutters. Curtains stir with sea breeze. Somewhere farther in the palace, bangles chime softly, and from the harbor comes the distant creak of ropes and the slap of water against stone. Krishna lies resting, utterly untroubled, in the center of everyone else's emergency. Duryodhana enters first. Of course he does. He sees Krishna sleeping and makes a choice in a blink. He seats himself near Krishna's head on a fine seat, upright, regal, very sure of what this arrangement implies. It is a small masterpiece of confidence. If a sleeping prince wakes and sees you first, then surely fortune has manners. Then Arjuna arrives. He sees Duryodhana, sees Krishna, takes in the whole little tableau at once, and without fuss, without challenge, without any attempt to outplay the room, he folds his hands and stands near Krishna's feet. That is all. No speech, no theatrical sigh, just Arjuna at Krishna's feet, waiting. You can feel the silence settle between them, not hostile exactly, but stretched tight enough to twang. Duryodhana sits there, radiating importance. Arjuna stands there, radiating patience. Both are trying very hard to look as if this is completely normal and not one of the strangest mornings of their lives. Outside, the sea keeps breathing. Inside, Krishna sleeps a little longer. There is something almost comical in it. Two of the greatest princes in Bharat, armed with dynastic urgency, reduced to the etiquette of where to place themselves near a napping relative. The future of a continent balanced on bedroom manners. Then Krishna wakes, his eyes open, he rises. The first thing he sees is Arjuna, because Arjuna stands before him at his feet. Then he notices Duryodhana seated beyond, near his head. Krishna greets them both warmly. No fluster, no surprise worth mentioning. He is fresh as dawn, while the other two have already spent half their energy pretending they are calm. Duryodhana immediately presses his claim. He arrived first, he says. By fairness and custom, Krishna should hear him first and grant his request before Arjuna speaks. Reasonable on its face. Also very Duryodhana. Krishna smiles the way only he can smile, gently and with the faintest hint that he sees the whole game board at once. He says he saw Arjuna first. He also reminds Duryodhana that Arjuna is younger and therefore has the customary privilege of first choice. You can almost hear Duryodhana's jaw set, not visibly. He is too trained for that. But inside? Oh, certainly, the chamber smells of sandalwood and salt. A gull cries beyond the balcony. Somewhere, a servant, sensing importance and danger, decides this is an excellent time to become invisible. Krishna then lays out the choice so plainly that it almost glows. On one side is vast Narayani army, seasoned and mighty, enough soldiers to make any king feel secure just by imagining the noise of them marching. On the other side, Krishna himself, alone, unarmed, resolved not to take up weapons in the war. That is the choice. An army of great power, or one man who will not fight. Arjuna does not hesitate. He chooses Krishna, not the troops, not the numbers, not the visible weight of war. Krishna. He says, in essence, that having Krishna with him is what he wants most. To have him near, to have him guide the chariot, to have that presence beside him when the world cracks open. Duryodhana hears this and cannot quite believe his fortune. The relief in him must have felt like cool water. He gets the Narayani army, a vast host, ranks upon ranks, the kind of acquisition that looks magnificent in ledgers and from a distance. He is delighted, tries not to show too much of it, but delight leaks. It shines through the careful courtesy. He had come hungry and leaves carrying what most kings would have lunged for first. If he thinks Arjuna has chosen sentiment over strategy, you can hardly blame him. Many men would. You stand in that room and feel how strange wisdom can look in the moment. One man walks away with soldiers, the other with a charioteer, and the sea keeps slapping the shore as if none of this is unusual. Balarama is there too in Dvaraka, great and broad as a white mountain, and he wants no part of the war. His ties run to both sides. He has affection for Duryodhana. He has love for Krishna and kinship with the Pandavas. So he steps back. No eager choosing, no banner raised. Sometimes abstaining is its own heavy burden. Satyaki, though, needs no such inner debate. He goes toward the Pandavas gladly, bright with fierce loyalty and the kind of war readiness that makes armor seem almost impatient on his shoulders. If Balarama is a plowed field waiting for rain, solid and deep, Satyaki is a spark looking for dry grass. And so Dvaraka, like the rest of Bharat, divides not neatly but along threads of affection, honor, memory, and temper. You leave the sea behind and ride north again. where another king is being won by a far softer weapon than steel. Shalya of Madra sets out intending to support the sons of Pandu. He is their maternal uncle, and he does not travel modestly. His host is immense. Chariots creak, horses stamp, elephant bells ring dull and heavy in the heat. Dust floats over the whole procession until even the sunlight looks tired. Along his route, something extraordinary appears. Rest houses, pavilions, pleasure gardens almost conjured from empty road, food in abundance, cool water, perfumed chambers, rich carpets, musicians, servants with folded hands and perfect timing. Every halt more luxurious than the last, every convenience already prepared. It is hospitality so lavish, it begins to feel unreal, like a king's daydream taking material form at mile after mile. Shalya is deeply pleased. Who would not be? You can see him stepping down from his chariot with the dust of travel in his beard, expecting the usual rough camp and getting instead soft cushions, shaded canopies, and platters fit for a coronation. Even a righteous elder can melt a little when someone has thought to chill the drinking water. He assumes, naturally, that Yudhishthira arranged all this. Who else would lavish such care on a beloved uncle coming to join him? Shalya enjoys himself. He praises the generosity. He grows warm with gratitude, and at last, full of royal satisfaction and trapped by his own good manners, he says he wishes to reward the one responsible. He will grant a boon. That is when Duryodhana steps forward. Imagine the moment, the smile, the bow, the unbearable smoothness of it. It was his hospitality all along. Shalya has eaten the feast, accepted the comforts, praised the giver without knowing the giver's name. Honor closes around him like a net pulled quietly from water. Having offered a boon, he cannot take it back without staining himself. Duryodhana asks for the largest thing possible. Lead my army. No sword at the throat, no shouted demand. Just carpets, sweet drinks, and timing. Sometimes a man is captured by silk. The air around Shalya changes at once. You can feel the shock in him. He has been outplayed not by force, but by etiquette, which is somehow more irritating. Had someone attacked him on the road, at least he could have swung back. But this is the sort of trap that leaves you nodding while your soul mutters curses. He gives his word, he must. Then, carrying that fresh humiliation like a stone in his chest, he continues on to meet the Pandavas and explain everything. The meeting is painful in a quiet way. No one shouts. That would be too easy. Shalya tells them what happened. The pavilions, the service, the boon, the revelation. He admits he is bound to Duryodhana now. Yet, he also assures Yudhishthira that his heart is not changed. When the time comes, he says, he will do what he can within the limits of honor and circumstance. Every alliance now comes knotted to another promise. Not simple, not clean. A web of promises laid over older promises. You stand in the Pandava camp that evening while lamps are lit one by one and moths begin their foolish orbit. The smell of cooked rice drifts from the kitchens. Somewhere Bhima snorts at the whole tale, because truly, only in royal politics can a man lose an army through cushions. Even Yudhishthira, tired as he is, must have felt the bitter absurdity. War approaches, and still men are being conquered by excellent catering. Elsewhere, kings choose more directly. Drupada stands with the Pandavas, as steady as the stone foundations beneath his halls. Virata too, bound now not only by alliance, but by recent closeness, by marriage ties, by having sheltered them and seen what sort of men they are when stripped of crown and comfort. The Panchalas gather, the Matsyas gather. Standards rise in colors bright enough to hurt the eyes at noon. From Chedi, from Kasi, from the mountain margins and river plains, rulers send what they can. Some come with genuine heat in their loyalty, some with careful, measured support. Wanting it known, they stood on the proper side without standing too near the front. Entire contingents appear under banners no one has seen in years, as if old friendships, once dusty, have suddenly remembered how to march. And on the Kaurava side, the answering tide swells. Bhishma remains with Hastinapura because his vow and his life are knotted to that throne so tightly, no knife can separate them now. Drona too is pulled by bread eaten, duties accepted, years spent in the Kuru house. Kripa stays, Ashvathama stays. Karna, burning with old rivalries and gratitude to Duryodhana, stays with a loyalty as fierce as it is costly. King after king joins that camp as well. Some love Duryodhana, some fear isolation, some distrust the rising strength of the Pandavas. Some simply cannot bear to be absent when history is putting on armor. You feel the whole subcontinent doing what flocks do before a storm, tilting, shifting, drawing close into formations that will make sense only once the first thunder breaks. At caravanserais and palace gates, the talk is all numbers. How many divisions? How many elephants? Who has pledged horses from the west? Who controls the river crossings? Did such and such king send his full strength or only a polite fraction? Merchants know more than ministers half the time. Priests hear confessions dressed as logistics. Stable boys carry rumors from one end of a kingdom to the other before sunset. Women at wells repeat names of commanders while drawing water. Even children begin arranging pebbles into little armies and arguing over whose side Krishna chose. You pass through market towns where smithies glow late into the evening. Bellows breathe. Hammer on metal rings under the cry of fruit sellers packing up for the night. Oil merchants grin like men living through a golden age of anxiety. Rope makers can barely keep up. Wheelwrights stop pretending this is a temporary rush. They all know. Everyone knows. The heat hangs heavy over the roads. Sometimes a wind rises just enough to carry the smell of rain that never arrives. Sometimes clouds build and dissolve, teasing shade and giving none. On river ferries, nobles and soldiers and pilgrims stand in brittle courtesy beside each other while the water slaps wood below. No one wants to say the obvious thing first, so they ask safer questions. How far to the next city? How many horses in your train? Have you heard from Madra? Is it true Krishna took no weapons? That last one moves fastest. Krishna himself, unarmed. By evening, the tale changes shape depending on the teller. Some say Arjuna made the wiser choice. Some say he made a sentimental one. Some say Duryodhana laughed all the way back to camp. Some say he was merely pleased, which in him is almost more alarming. But everyone repeats the image. The sleeping Krishna, Duryodhana near the head, Arjuna near the feet, and the morning opening like a riddle. You can almost see listeners everywhere arranging that scene in their minds, testing it from every angle. One old courtier in a roadside hall, chewing fennel after dinner, decides that where a man sits tells you everything. Another insists that armies decide wars. A third shrugs and asks for more lentils. Very wise, that third one. In Hastinapura, reports arrive daily now. Messengers bow low, deliver their news, and back away with dust still clinging to their hems. So-and-so has joined. So-and-so is marching. So-and-so sends regrets wrapped in diplomacy, so perfumed you can smell the refusal through the parchment. Dhritarashtra listens in darkness. Duryodhana listens in fire. The elders listen with faces that give away less than their hearts. In Upaplavya, the news comes too, and each report settles differently. Krishna is with Arjuna. The Narayani host is with Duryodhana. Shalya has been bound by hospitality. Other kings are on the move. Every arrival narrows the future. You stand one evening at the edge of the Pandava encampment while the sun goes down in a sheet of copper light. Banners droop at last in the stillness after wind. Cooks stir great pots. Horses lower their heads into feed. Farther off, priests murmur over evening rites, while smoke from the altars rises straight into a sky gone suddenly tender. For one brief hour, war preparations look almost peaceful. Men wash dust from their arms. Someone laughs over a broken harness buckle. A prince, who spent the day discussing troop lines, now sits cross-legged eating spiced lentils from a bronze bowl. An exhausted scribe falls asleep with a reed pen in hand and wakes with ink on his cheek, promoted without consent into the brotherhood of overworked officials everywhere. You are there. The ground is still warm through your sandals. The scent of ghee, cumin, and wood smoke settles low in the camp. Fireflies begin near the water channels. Somewhere a conch sounds for worship, and all the calculations of kings pause for one trembling note. But only for a moment, because after Dvaraka, after the roads, after the courtesies and feasts and sealed agreements, the shape of things is clearer now than anyone wants to admit. Krishna will stand with Arjuna. Duryodhana has chosen force and quantity. The kings of the land have begun to declare themselves, each in the language he trusts most. Gift, oath, kinship, fear, pride, memory, obligation. The roads are still crowded, still hot, still loud with wheels and hooves and promises. Yet beneath all that movement, something has already become very still. A decision in the bones, a silence under the noise. Night settles slowly over India. From the western sea to the Kuru plain, lamps appear in palace windows and village shrines. Somewhere Shalya lies awake, replaying the moment the smiling host revealed his name. Somewhere Duryodhana counts allies like treasure. Somewhere Arjuna sleeps more easily for having chosen one unarmed friend over 1,000 armed men. Somewhere Krishna, who has agreed to hold the reins but not lift a weapon, looks out into the dark as if he can already hear distant conches. The roads cool by degrees, dust sinks, the last ferries tie up. In courtyards, men roll up travel blankets and stretch aching backs. In royal stables, grooms rub down horses by lamplight, speaking softly to them as if gentleness might survive what is coming. The smell of hay, oil, and warm animal breath fills the night, and above it all, the stars come out, one by one, patient and terribly clear. Under those stars, banners sleep folded beside chariots, seals harden on fresh letters, and the kingdoms of Bharat, having spent the day hurrying toward their choices, lie down at last facing the same northward plain, as though in their dreams they are already gathering there. While the Pandavas gather hope and steel in Upaplavya, Hastinapura learns how loud silence can become. The city does not look afraid at first. Its gates still open at dawn. Merchants still argue over sesame and fine cotton. Temple bells still tremble in the morning air. Cooks still crouch over charcoal fires, turning flatbread with quick brown fingers, while smoke lifts blue into the heat. But stay a little longer. You begin to notice the pauses. A cart driver stops mid-curse when he sees a royal messenger pass. Women at the well lower their voices without meaning to. Stable boys, who usually laugh like crows, now glance toward the palace and go quiet. Even the dogs sleep with one ear raised. The smell reaches you before the thought does. Incense, sandalwood, oil from polished doors, horse sweat from the lower yards, and under it all, something sharper, harder to hide. Fear has a smell in summer. Dry cloth, old metal, a room that has been shut too long. In Hastinapura, every chamber carries it differently. In the king's rooms, fear sits in the dark and breathes slowly. In Duryodhana's halls, it dresses itself as confidence and walks with a straight back. In Vidura's house, it is admitted by name and offered a seat. The corridors between them never really cool. You could press your palm to the stone at midnight and still feel the day stored there. Servants move with brass lamps held low. Sandals whisper over polished floors. Curtains stir when no one is near them. Somewhere, always, a conch sounds from a shrine and then fades, leaving the silence bigger than before. Dhritarashtra sits in that silence and listens to his kingdom tightening. He knows rooms by sound now more than touch. The slight scrape of a carved chair leg tells him which servant has entered. The weight of footsteps tells him whether it is Vidura or Sanjaya or one of his sons trying to sound less angry than he is. The faint clink of bracelets means Gandhari is near. The soft rush of cloth, the pause before a man speaks, the way someone bows though he cannot see it. These are his lamps. You stand near the far pillar and watch his hands. They grip the armrests too often, not dramatically, not with royal thunder, just a tightening and loosening, as if the throne itself were a thing that might drift away unless held. He asks for news all the time now. Who has joined the sons of Pandu? Who has crossed which river? Which banners have been seen on the road from Panchala? How many chariots? How many elephants? Who has sent gifts? Who has sent excuses? Who has gone suspiciously quiet? Then, when the numbers come, he breathes like a man sitting beside a well and hearing stones dropped into it. Far down, no bottom. The elders come and go. Bhishma arrives like winter discipline, wrapped in white. Drona comes with that grave teacher's face, heavy with things he knows and hates. Kripa, spare and watchful, says little and misses nothing. Vidura comes most often because somebody has to keep walking into the fire and saying it is hot. Again and again, they advise peace, not weak peace, not crawling peace, simple justice. Give the Pandavas what is theirs. Return at least a portion of the kingdom. Do not make all the earth pay for one man's pride. The words are not new. That is part of the misery. Nobody in this palace lacks warning. They lack obedience to warning. There is a difference, and everyone can taste it by now. You can feel it in the assembly hall. The great chamber gleams as if nothing is wrong. Pillars rise smooth and pale. Lamps float in niches with calm little flames. Fans made of peacock feathers move the warm air. Jewel work flashes at wrists and throats. Gold is everywhere, doing its best to look reassuring. It is not succeeding. The smell of burning ghee hangs heavy. Incense curls upward in lazy blue ribbons. Beneath it, men sweat in their silk. A messenger from Drupada has already come before this. A Brahmana envoy with dharma in his mouth and hard facts under it. He had stood in this very hall and reminded them all what had happened. Dice loaded by deceit. A queen dragged and humiliated. Exile completed. the terms fulfilled, the sons of Pandu still asking for peace. The old men had listened. Bhishma had admitted the truth in it. Even he, bound to the Kuru throne by those ancient iron vows of his, could not scrape falsehood over what everyone remembered. Drona had not argued. Kripa had not argued. The hall had shifted and rustled and avoided its own conscience. Then Karna, hot as ever, had thrown sharp words into the air like sparks into dry grass. He spoke of rules and claims and technical corners, as if grief can be folded up neatly inside procedure. Dhritarashtra had rebuked him lightly, the sort of rebuke that sounds stern and changes absolutely nothing. That is how this court often behaves now, like a man waving at a flood. So the envoy returned, the warning remained, and Dhritarashtra, restless, turned to the one man he trusted to see clearly for him, Sanjaya. Sanjaya had always been useful in the way a steady hand is useful when a room is crowded with men who love to gesture. He was not loud, he did not preen. He could remember a speech accurately and carry it without dropping pieces from personal vanity along the road. In a royal court, that is nearly a superpower. Dhritarashtra called him close. The king spoke with sorrow, real sorrow too. That is what makes him so hard to dismiss. He was not made only of weakness. He could feel the cliff edge. He could hear the stones breaking underfoot. He did not want war. He did not want sons lost, grandsons lost. The house of Kuru burned from within. He wanted peace. He simply wanted it without paying the price peace demanded. The trap is already there in the room. Sanjaya was told to go to Upaplavya, carry greetings, speak gently, ask after the Pandavas, say that war would be ruin, say that old men and children always suffer for the decisions of princes, say that the king grieves, say all the soft true things. And then what? That was the problem hanging in the room like smoke. No kingdom offered, no villages promised, no firm surrender of what had been taken. Only concern, deep, expensive-sounding concern. Still, Sanjaya went, because messengers go. They always go, even when everyone knows they are being sent with a silk covering over an empty plate. The road to Upaplavya was hot and glaring. Dust rose around the horses' legs and settled in the folds of cloth. At wells and resting houses, travelers had become amateur strategists overnight. A potter near the roadside could tell you which king had joined which side. A shepherd who had never seen a court in his life had opinions about Bhishma. One old woman, fanning a brazier of lentils, shook her head and said every prince in Bharat had decided to settle his emotions using elephants. She was not entirely wrong. When Sanjaya reached the Pandava camp, he found discipline, welcome, and no illusions. The tents stood in ordered lines. Banners moved in the wind. Armorers hammered at fittings in the shade. Horses stamped and tossed their heads. The air held the smell of leather, hot canvas, and cooking rice. War was preparing itself politely. Yudhishthira received the envoy with courtesy so complete it almost hurt. There is something devastating about a man remaining gentle when everyone has handed him reasons not to be. Sanjaya delivered the king's words. He spoke of age, sorrow, kinship, and the horror that would come if cousins met in battle. He carried Dhritarashtra's anxiety faithfully. You can almost feel him trying to build a bridge out of breath. Yudhishthira listened. Then he answered without heat. He spoke of what had happened, step by patient step. The deceited dice, the exile endured, the incognito year fulfilled, the insults swallowed, the promises kept on the Pandava side, one by one, all the way to the bitter end. He was not begging, he was reciting the shape of truth. Then he made the request that should have saved the world. Not the full kingdom, not vengeance, not the humiliation of the Kauravas. 5 villages, just enough land for 5 brothers to stand on without shame, a place for each to rule, a place where peace could still be planted, thin and stubborn, and maybe made to grow. You can picture Sanjaya hearing it and feeling the road home lengthen in his mind. Because once a request becomes that small, refusal stops pretending to be policy. When he returned to Hastinapura, the court gathered again. The afternoon heat had settled over the palace like a heavy hand. Fans stirred. Lamps were prepared early because storm clouds had been threatening all day without the kindness of rain. You stood by a carved screen and watched faces sharpen when Sanjaya entered. He reported everything, the courtesy shown him, the discipline of the camp, the restraint in Yudhishthira's voice, the words about exile fulfilled, the appeal to kinship, and then the final modest request, laid before the court like a bowl of clear water. 5 villages, no more. For a heartbeat, the hall almost became honest. You could feel it. The old men heard their chance arriving. The courtiers heard it. Even those who loved Duryodhana most knew what this meant. Agree, and the world might yet stagger away from the edge. Bhishma urged it. Drona urged it. Vidura, of course, urged it with all the exhausted force of a man who has been urging the same truth for years. Gandhari, too, in her chambers later, would urge it in her own grave way. Even Dhritarashtra leaned toward it, like grass bending toward a little moisture. But Duryodhana sat there as if carved from certainty. His pride had become a kind of stillness now. He no longer needed to flare at every rebuke. He had passed beyond that into something colder. He believed his position because he had repeated it so often that it felt older than reality. The kingdom was his, power was his. Concession to him would not be peace, it would be personal extinction. In his quarters, this certainty was fed and brushed and armored every day. Go there and you feel the difference immediately. The rooms are bright, open, full of movement. Weapons gleam on stands. Servants hurry. Friends and flatterers come and go. Karna is there often, blazing with loyalty. Sakuni drifts in like a smile, holding a knife by the handle. Dushasana brings energy of the worst possible kind, eager as a man who thinks cruelty is a personality. Maps lie open. Messengers kneel. Stewards count grain, oil, spear shafts, horseshoes, tent cloth, axle grease. War is not only destiny, it is inventory. Somebody has to count the lentils before the apocalypse. There is almost something funny in it. While old kings speak of righteousness, some poor quartermaster is discovering that 20 extra elephants require an outrageous amount of fodder and an even more outrageous number of irritated handlers. The world ends administratively first. In these rooms, Duryodhana hears what he wants to hear. Karna tells him the Pandavas can be broken. Sakuni oils every grievance until it shines. Dushasana grins at the very thought of conflict. Men who depend on royal favor become suddenly convinced that destiny itself prefers the Kaurava side. Amazing how often destiny seems to agree with the person holding the payroll. You stand near a long window where the evening heat presses through the lattice. Outside, the city turns copper in the lowering sun. The Ganga wind brings a breath of damp mud and cooling reeds. Inside, Duryodhana speaks of strength, rank, allies, formations, inevitability. He does not speak of Draupadi in that hall. He does not speak of the loaded dice. He does not speak of what 5 villages would cost compared to what war will cost. He speaks as if refusal were manliness, as if hardness were wisdom, as if never bending were the same thing as standing tall. And because pride hates an empty room, it always gathers company. Still the warnings continue. Vidura comes again. Always Vidura. He is one of those men whose presence lowers the temperature of foolishness by several degrees, though not enough in this house. His words are never perfumed. He speaks to Dhritarashtra about kingship, self-command, greed, and ruin. He reminds him gently and then not so gently that affection is not absolution. A father may love a son and still stop him from burning down the family home. Dhritarashtra listens. That is his tragedy and his offense, both at once. He listens beautifully. He agrees. He sighs. He recalls wise sayings. He praises Vidura's honesty. He confesses fear. He even trembles. And then he does not act. You can feel the frustration in the room like a trapped hornet. At night, it gets worse. The palace cools a little after sunset, but not enough. Key lamps throw soft gold against dark beams. Perfumed smoke hangs over sleeping courtyards. Somewhere, a woman sings a child to sleep. Somewhere, a guard clears his throat and shifts his spear. Somewhere, a horse kicks once against its stall. Dhritarashtra cannot rest. He calls for Vidura. The old counselor comes in the dark hours when truth feels louder because there are fewer curtains to muffle it. The king speaks of dread, of dreams, of his heart refusing to settle in his chest. Vidura answers with wisdom earned over a lifetime of watching men confuse desire with right. He speaks of restraint, duty, inner blindness, the ruin that follows greed, like a wheel follows an axle. The night air smells of lamp oil and old wood. You sit in the hush and hear the king breathing. But even wisdom can strike a locked door forever and not get in. Some nights, the talk deepens further. A sage is brought. High teachings flicker in those hours like distant lightning. The soul, the self, what endures beyond the body, what death really is and is not. For a little while, the palace almost feels like an ashram pretending it has not spent all week ordering chariot repairs. And then, dawn comes, and the same men put on silk and gold and return to the machinery of refusal. Outside, omens begin to thicken. Birds call at the wrong hours. Jackals cry too near the walls. Horses shy at empty spaces. The wind changes suddenly and sets banners snapping when the sky above is still. In shrines, flames sputter sideways. In private rooms, mothers wake from uneasy dreams and sit listening to the dark. No one needs a priest to explain the mood. The city feels watched. You walk through the market at midday, and the smell changes from coriander and hot oil to wet clay as a cloudburst spits briefly over the streets, then vanishes. Children shriek and laugh, and then stop because their mothers are staring at the palace again. 2 old men under an awning argue about whether Bhishma can stop the sons of Pandu. A fruit seller mutters that if the grandsire could stop anything, he might have chosen a more convenient decade. Even in fear, people remain people. They worry, they gossip, they make jokes so they do not have to taste the full bitterness all at once. Back in the court, the pressure rises. Sanjaya is called once more to speak plainly. He has seen the Pandavas. He has measured their mood. He knows they still want peace, but not humiliation. He describes Arjuna's steadiness, Bhima's coiled force, the resolve of their allies, Krishna standing with them, He speaks the truth a messenger can safely speak. War with such men will not be a brief correction. It will be a swallowing. Bhishma supports him, Drona supports him, Kripa, measured as ever, supports him. Even some lesser voices, usually content to nod wherever power leans, begin to sound uneasy. Then Duryodhana answers. He does not rant. That would almost be easier. He dismisses, he hardens, he repeats his claim until it lands in the hall like a gate dropped into place. He will not yield the kingdom. He will not divide power. He will not hand over land enough to ease a single brother's grief. Not even a little patch, not even what could fit under the point of a needle. There it is. The phrase moves through the court like cold water. No one speaks immediately. You can hear fabric shift. Somebody's bracelet taps once against a cup. Outside, from very far off, comes the hollow cry of a peacock. The sound is beautiful and strange and completely wrong for the moment. Dhritarashtra shudders. Not outwardly much. He is too practiced for that. But his fingers clutch the throne again, and this time they do not release at once. He knows, he has always known, somewhere inside the fog of love and fear, where this road ends. Vidura knows it too. He looks tired now, in a way that has nothing to do with age. Tired like a man carrying water to a house whose owners insist on setting fresh fires. Yet he still speaks. He reminds the king that the chance is not gone until the armies meet. He reminds him that one command from a father could still restrain a son. One command. Imagine it, all this greatness, all this lineage, all these white-bearded veterans and polished halls and sacred vows, brought to the mercy of one sentence a father cannot make himself say. You are standing in the corridor afterward when the court spills out. The sun has gone down. Lamps bloom one by one along the walls. Courtiers whisper in knots. Sandals click softly on stone. The smell of incense has thickened, but it cannot quite cover the rank sweetness of fear. A maid carrying folded cloth nearly walks into a guard because she is listening too hard to two ministers muttering by a pillar. Everybody is still pretending there are stages left to pass through. More advice, more embassies, more decorum, more chances. And that is true. But the truth now has a wound in it. The palace can feel it. In Gandhari's rooms, cloth rustles as she sits with her sorrow wrapped around her as tightly as the blindfold she chose long ago. She speaks to her husband with grave force. Restrain the boy. Save the house. Do not let affection become funeral smoke. In Duryodhana's quarters, plans continue late into the night. Armor is inspected. Guest commanders are assigned lodging. Couriers run. Karna's voice burns low and fierce. Sakuni moves pieces nobody can quite see until they cut. In Vidura's house, the lamps are simpler. The meal is plainer. Rice, vegetables, cool water. He eats without luxury and sleeps, when he sleeps, with a cleaner heart than anyone in the palace. Not a happy heart, just a clean one. There is a difference there too. And in Dhritarashtra's chamber, darkness pools thick and velvet around the king, who cannot see and yet is surrounded by visions of what is coming. He hears the city settling. He hears distant wheels on stone. He hears the watch changing at the gates. He hears his own breath. You are there in the hush, and for a moment, the whole kingdom seems to wait with him. One order could still alter everything. One yielding, one act of strength that would look to proud eyes like surrender. But pride has a louder voice in this palace than wisdom. So, another night passes. Another chance remains on the table until morning, and then is carried away untouched. like a fine meal left to cool. By dawn, the corridors are moving again. Fresh garlands are hung, floors are swept, reports are copied, horses are watered, priests pour libations into sacred fire. The city wakes under a sky already whitening with heat. And all through Hastinapura, from the king's shadowed chamber to the prince's bright, hard rooms, the same truth presses against every wall. Peace is still possible, but only if someone chooses it. And then the one man who might still prevent the war takes the road himself. Morning opens pale over Upaplavya. The camp is awake before the sun fully rises. Horses stamp in the chill, wheel rims creak. Men carry water in brass pots that ring softly against their hips. Smoke from cooking fires lies low over the ground, smelling of barley, ghee, and damp ash. Krishna is ready early. He does not go like a man hurrying to a quarrel. He goes like someone who already knows the shape of the day and has accepted its weight. His chariot stands bright in the growing light, polished wood catching gold at the edges. The horses toss their heads, white breath clouding the cool air. Around him, everyone tries very hard to look calm. It does not work. You can feel it in the way hands keep adjusting sword belts that are not needed for an embassy, in the way servants bring and rebring the same bundle, in the way warriors who fear very little keep glancing toward Krishna as if one last look might hold the world together. Yudhishthira sends him with peace in both hands. Bhima sends him with rage barely folded up inside courtesy. Arjuna watches in stillness, though the stillness is the dangerous kind, like a river before flood. Draupadi is not loud. She does not need to be. Her memory travels with him too, dark-haired and unforgotten, all the way to Hastinapura. Krishna takes all of it. Then the reins lift, the horses move, the embassy begins. Dust rises behind the wheels in a soft brown ribbon. The road north stretches through fields already cut in places, stubble shining pale in the morning light. Villagers hear he is coming before they see him. Someone always hears first: a cartman, a boy on a wall, a woman returning from the well, and then the whisper moves ahead, faster than any horse. Krishna is on the road. Krishna is going to Hastinapura. Krishna himself is trying. People come out to watch. Old men lean on staffs. Children squint from under messy hair. Women with wet hands from washing grain shade their eyes with the edge of a sari. Cowherds stand still in the dust, cows wandering on without them. Even the dogs seem unusually thoughtful, which is saying a lot for village dogs. Some bow, some just stare. Some join their palms and say nothing, because what is there to say? When the person riding past is both kin and kingmaker and something wider than either, words start to feel flimsy. The air warms quickly. By mid-morning, the sun is bright enough to turn the road white. Heat shimmers above the earth. The smell changes as the day grows. Dust, neem leaves, horse sweat, hot leather, flowering creepers from roadside shrines. You ride with the procession in that humming brightness, and every mile feels strange. This is not a war march. There are no drums. This is not a pilgrimage. No one is singing. It is only a small diplomatic train moving through northern India beneath a broad blue sky. And somehow, it feels heavier than an army. At halting places, kings and householders come out offering welcome. Fine pavilions are made ready. Cushions are laid. Garlands appear as if flowers have been hiding in baskets for exactly this moment. Everyone wants to honor him. Everyone wants a little of his presence to pass over their threshold. Krishna accepts respect, but lightly. He does not settle into luxury. He rests where he must, blesses whom he meets, hears what people say. Some ask whether there will be peace. Some do not ask because they do not want to hear their own fear spoken aloud. Some ask after the Pandavas as if asking after relatives caught in a storm. He gives comfort where he can, but the road keeps pulling forward. At dusk one evening, the western sky turns copper and rose. Birds cross overhead in black lines. The smell of river mud rises from a nearby bank, cool and deep after the day's heat. Ghee lamps are lit in a roadside rest house. Their small flames tremble in the breeze. You sit in that evening hush and feel how all of India seems to be holding one breath. If he succeeds, fathers may keep their sons. If he fails, the fields will empty into war. Simple as that, terrible as that. By the time the towers of Hastinapura begin to show in the distance, the news has already reached the city. It reaches the market first, because markets know everything before palaces admit it. Vegetable sellers pause with their scales in hand. Potters lift clay-streaked fingers from spinning wheels. Goldsmiths stop squinting at fine work. Spice merchants stand amid heaps of cumin and coriander and black pepper, while customers forget to haggle, which may be the first sign of apocalypse. The city starts tidying itself in a panic. Doorways are swept. Water is sprinkled to lay the dust. Banners are hung. Courtyards are washed. Perfume is burned. Officials begin moving quickly with the solemn face of men who wish to appear fully prepared, though everyone can see they are not. You enter with Krishna through streets lined by onlookers. Silk rustles from upper balconies. Temple bells sound somewhere deeper in the city. Wheels clatter on stone. The smell is thick and layered now. Incense, frying sweets, hot masonry, elephant musk, lotus from decorated pools, humanity in large numbers trying to stand respectfully in summer weather. People press close, but not too close. Whispers run ahead and behind the chariot. Women point from latticed windows. Boys rise onto their toes and nearly topple over. Priests lift their hands in blessing. Veterans straighten their backs without thinking. Even those loyal to Duryodhana feel it. The air has changed. In the palace, elders are already waiting. Bhishma stands like an old tree that has survived too many monsoons. Drona's face is grave. Kripa watches everything. Dhritarashtra waits inside the blindness of his chamber, listening for footfalls and omens in the same breath. Duryodhana is polished and ready, every fold in place, every thought arranged into confidence so firm it has almost stopped being thought. Almost, because even he cannot quite treat this as routine. How do you behave when Krishna enters your capital as a peace envoy? Apparently, with very careful posture. The formal welcome is magnificent. Servants move in lines, golden vessels gleam, conches sound, courtiers bow in sequence. The floor has been strewn with flowers so thickly that the marble almost disappears beneath marigold and jasmine. Sandal paste perfumes the hall. Fans stir the hot air in slow arcs. And yet, beneath all that polished splendor is a nervousness so sharp you could use it to cut fruit. Dhritarashtra offers royal hospitality. Duryodhana too makes his arrangements rich and dazzling. Spacious quarters, fine food, precious gifts, everything that says honor, status, regard, everything that says you are in the house of kings, not wandering among forest exiles and inconvenient memories. Krishna refuses, not rudely, not theatrically, He simply will not eat the food of one whose heart is turned against those he claims as kin. He will not stay where courtesy is dressed in silk, but emptied of truth. He leaves the shining arrangements untouched, and all that careful luxury sits there looking suddenly awkward, like a peacock dancing in the rain for someone who has already walked away. Then he goes to Vidura's house, and the whole city feels the difference. Vidura's dwelling is not poor, but it is plain beside the royal splendor. No acres of polished excess, no performance, no hidden contest disguised as welcome. The courtyard is clean, lamps burn steadily, the water is cool, the food is simple and warm. You step inside, and the air changes at once. There is the smell of cooked greens, lentils, rice, clarified butter, clean clay, and night-blooming flowers from somewhere beyond the wall. No crowd of flatterers, no over-eager attendants hovering with jeweled trays, just honest affection, as restful as shade. Vidura receives Krishna with the fullness of his heart. No bargaining, no display, only love. The meal set before him is ordinary by palace standards and perfect by every standard that matters. Rice steaming in a bronze bowl, vegetables seasoned well, milk, curds, perhaps a little fruit. Food made to nourish, not impress. You can almost feel the relief of it settle through the room. Outside, the city hums and speculates. Inside, two old souls speak deep into the evening. Vidura does not waste time with small talk. He knows why Krishna has come. He knows what kind of wall stands in front of peace. He tells him plainly that Duryodhana is swollen with pride, tied to Karna, Sakuni, and Dushasana, deaf to the elders, drunk on power, already stained with wrong. He warns him that reason may strike this court and slide off like rain from oiled leather. Krishna hears him. He knows all this already, of course. But there is comfort in hearing truth spoken cleanly, without perfume, without fear. The night deepens around the house. Crickets begin outside. Somewhere far off, a watchman taps his staff. The breeze carries a faint damp scent from the river. In the lamp glow, Vidura's face looks lined with care and sleeplessness. Krishna's looks calm, lit from within, in a way no lamp quite accounts for. You sit there in the gentle stillness and understand why this house matters. Palaces have grandeur. Homes have truth. Later, Kunti comes. She has been living in Hastinapura all these years, like a wound hidden under royal cloth. When Krishna sees her, the distance between camps and courts collapses at once. She asks of her sons. She asks after their health, their endurance, their temper. The things mothers ask even when the answer might split them open. And then the grief comes through, not wild, not theatrical, a deep, worn grief, the kind that has sat upright for years and learned court manners, while never once forgetting the dice hall, the forest, the insult, the waiting. She speaks of her children's suffering, of Draupadi's humiliation, of how long restraint has been asked of the righteous, while the unrighteous feast. The room holds it all. The lamp flame trembles once in the draught. Outside, a bullock snorts in its sleep. Vidura's house smells faintly now of sesame oil and cooling rice. The whole night feels close around you, listening. Krishna comforts her as best comfort can be given in such a time. He tells her he will speak fully. Peace will be offered to the last breath before war. No one will later say the chance was not given. That matters. At dawn, the palace summons him. Morning in Hastinapura comes with drums from temple courtyards and the harsh calls of crows on the battlements. The heat starts early. Servants hurry through corridors carrying water jars and folded cloth. Incense burns in hallways that still hold the stone coolness of night for a few precious moments before the day turns warm. You walk with Krishna toward the assembly. The corridors are lined. Courtiers bow, guards lower spears, elders straighten as he enters. Even the polished floor seems to catch and hold more light. The hall itself is immense, pillared, hung with banners, rich with gold and carved wood. Ghee lamps burn along the walls, though daylight pours in from high openings. The air smells of sandalwood, old stone, silk, and anxiety. Everyone is there. Dhritarashtra on his seat, blind and listening. Bhishma with his white beard and grief hidden under discipline. Drona, austere as a drawn line. Kripa, patient-eyed. Vidura, severe and sorrowing. Duryodhana, armored in pride. Karna beside him, bright and hard and inwardly storming. Sakuni watching with narrow delight, though even he is quieter today. Princes, counselors, kings, attendants, an entire world gathered beneath one roof to hear whether it will save itself. You can feel the hall waiting. Krishna begins. His words are clear. No ornament for ornament's sake, no fog, no clever evasion. He lays out the truth as one might lay weapons on a cloth. One by one, plain in full view, the sons of Pandu fulfilled the terms forced upon them. They endured the forest. They endured concealment. They did not break their word. They ask now only for what is theirs. He speaks of kinship. He speaks of the ruin that war will bring. He reminds them of fathers and sons, of widowed queens, of grand lineages ending in smoke. He reminds them that no one truly wins a war like this, not when cousins face cousins and teachers stand opposite students. The sound of his voice travels through the hall like cool water poured into a heated vessel. You sit there and can almost believe they will listen. He speaks of compromise. If not the kingdom entire, then a share. If not a share, then enough for the 5 brothers to live as Kshatriyas, not beggars. His patience is immense, but it is not softness. Every offer reveals the shame of refusing it. Every step back from rightful claim makes Duryodhana's hardness more naked. The elders hear it. Bhishma approves. Drona too. Vidura's chest almost seems to loosen with hope for one dangerous instant. Even Dhritarashtra, in his own dim inward chamber, knows that this is the road that should be taken. You can feel it in the silence after Krishna speaks, that charged silence when truth has been placed in the center and nobody can pretend they did not see it. Then Duryodhana answers. He does not yield. Pride has had too long to calcify. He cannot bear the thought of giving back what he seized. He cannot bear the memory of being opposed, outshone, corrected. Peace, to him, has begun to look like defeat, and so he speaks as men do when they have mistaken stubbornness for strength. He denies obligation. He mocks concession. He hardens around his own refusal until it becomes almost a second skeleton inside him. And there it comes, the line that chills the room. He will not give them land enough to be pierced by the point of a needle. There it is, so small a measure, so large a doom. The hall changes after that. Not visibly at first, no roof cracks, no lamps go out. Servants still stand where they stood. Fans still move the air. But something settles over the chamber, heavy as monsoon cloud. Bhishma rebukes him. Drona warns him. Vidura presses him again, grief sharpened now into anger. Dhritarashtra pleads in the weak, exhausted way of a father who wants the fire to stop burning without ever taking his son's hand from the oil jar. Nothing turns him. You are sitting close enough to hear silk whisper when men shift on their seats, close enough to smell the warmed metal of ornaments and the sandal paste on old wood, close enough to feel the impossible frustration of watching a door stand open, while someone calmly bricks it shut from the inside. Krishna speaks again. The patience is still there, but now it carries thunder behind it. He reminds the court of all that has already been endured. The house of luck, the poison, the dice, the dragging of Draupadi into the hall, the exile, the insults layered year upon year like dry tinder. He's not listing complaints. He's holding up memory itself and asking how much more a family thinks it can do without burning. Still, Duryodhana refuses, and because pride rarely travels alone, it begins breeding folly. Somewhere behind the formal stillness of the court, an ugly thought has already been moving. Seize Krishna, hold him, bind the envoy, break the Pandavas' heart before war even begins. It is the kind of plan that sounds clever only to men who have stopped recognizing cliffs. Word of it leaks. Such things always do. Satyaki learns of it and bristles like a drawn bow. Vidura hears and is horrified. Dhritarashtra, when the madness reaches his ears, is struck with panic at last. Even in this court, where bad judgment has enjoyed a long, prosperous career, this is exceptionally foolish. Imagine the attendants trying to stay composed while this idea circulates. One man is adjusting a garland. Another is staring very hard at the floor. A third has suddenly developed an intense spiritual interest in the far wall. Because what expression exactly are you supposed to wear when princes are considering arresting Krishna? Respectful neutrality has its limits. The warning reaches the hall. Vidura condemns the plan outright. He names it for what it is, disgrace piled on doom. Dhritarashtra calls on his son to stop. Elders protest. But Duryodhana, flushed now with that dangerous combination of fear and arrogance, presses on in his mind, if not yet with his hands. Krishna remains utterly still. Then he asks, in essence, whether they truly think he can be taken like an ordinary man surrounded at court. The question hangs there. Not long. Because the next moment, the hall cannot contain what stands inside it. The change begins like light, refusing to stay in one shape. Krishna does not move as warriors move, no reaching for weapon or shield. Instead, the room itself seems to loosen around him. The glow around his body deepens, brightens, widens. What had been one beloved human form starts opening into something immeasurable. You are in that hall. You hear the sudden intake of breath before anyone remembers etiquette. You smell hot lamp oil and singed wick as flames leap in their cups. Gold blazes on pillars. Shadows vanish. The polished floor throws back wild brightness. And Krishna is no longer only the envoy before the throne. He is radiance. He is vastness. He is crowns within crowns, weapons within light, worlds turning where a single body had stood. The sun seems there. Fire seems there. Storm and sky and all directions. Gods are glimpsed. Serpents, guardians. The very architecture of existence showing through court ceremony like lightning through thin cloth. Some see more, some less. Dhritarashtra, blind from birth, longs for sight just for this moment and is granted it. For one brief blazing interval he sees. Imagine that first sight, being not palace, not sun, not sunrise over the Ganga, but this, infinity all at once, enough to satisfy a lifetime and overwhelm it too. When the vision passes, he asks for darkness again. After seeing that ordinary sight would be like returning from ocean to a water cup. Many in the hall tremble. Some bow at once. Some shut their eyes because they cannot bear the brilliance. Some stand frozen, mouths parted, every political calculation burned clean away for one heartbeat. And some, astonishingly, remain stubborn even before the impossible. Duryodhana is shaken, yes, but pride has strange endurance. It can watch heaven split open and still mutter that it was not persuaded. Karna, too, stands fierce and stricken. Sakuni's cleverness shrinks like a shadow at noon. Bhishma folds into reverence. Drona gazes as one who recognizes the limit of all learning before the infinite. The hall is no longer a hall. It is a crack in the world. The banners overhead stir in a wind no one else brought. The conches at the entrance seem very small now. The courtiers who spent all morning arranging proper ranks and ceremonial spacing are suddenly faced with the fact that eternity does not care much about seating charts. That may be the gentlest absurdity in all of this. So much protocol, so many polished speeches, and then the universe itself arrives, and everyone has to improvise. The vision withdraws at last. Light gathers back into the familiar beloved form. The hall returns. Pillars stand where they stood. Lamps gutter and steady. Men blink like sleepers waking. Jewelry rests again against ordinary cloth. Breathing resumes in uneven waves. Krishna stands there once more as envoy. But nothing is ordinary now. He has shown them enough. No one can say they did not know whom they were dealing with. No one can pretend this was merely a dispute over parcels of earth and inheritance lines scratched on maps. In that blaze, the whole court saw that Dharma itself had entered and spoken. Still, the choice remains. It always remains. Krishna does not strike them down. He does not seize the city. He does not turn revelation into coercion. He gives warning, truth, presence, and one final chance. That is all. Duryodhana does not bend. There is a kind of sorrow more tired than anger. It settles now over the elders like dust after a chariot has passed. Bhishma knows. Drona knows. Vidura knows. Dhritarashtra knows and cannot bear knowing. The chance has come to the very center of the court and found no place to land. The embassy is over. Krishna leaves the assembly. You go with him through corridors, suddenly hushed. No one jostles now. No one whispers loudly. The palace smells of overheated incense and fear. Outside, the afternoon sun lies hard on the courtyards. Pigeons startle from the eaves. Somewhere, an elephant shifts its weight and rattles its chain. The city that had buzzed with hope now listens for the shape of disappointment. He returns once more to those who love him. There are farewells, consultations, the low, urgent exchange of what must now be done. Kunti's sorrow deepens into that stony endurance mothers wear when tears no longer help. Vidura's face is carved from grief and clarity both. Evening begins to gather at the edges of the city. The western sky softens. Dust in the roads turns red gold. Smoke rises from cook fires in thin blue columns. Temple bells ring for the lamps. For one brief hour, Hastinapura looks peaceful from a distance, almost innocent, like any great city settling into dusk. But you know better now. The last lamp has been carried into the dark place. It burned fully, it was seen, and it did not turn them. Krishna takes the road away from the city with the same calm with which he came, though the world behind him has grown heavier. Wheels roll, horses breathe. The evening breeze carries the scent of river water and trampled grass. Above, the first stars appear one by one in the bruised violet sky. Behind him, in palace halls and private chambers, people begin preparing themselves to admit what they have feared for months. Peace has stood in the court and spoken in a human voice. Pride answered. And now the road to Kurukshetra lies open, wide and silent in the falling night. Once peace leaves the court, everything turns quieter and somehow even sadder. Krishna has done what could be done. He has walked into the Kuru hall with patience in his voice and the fate of families in his hands. He has asked for justice, then compromise, then almost nothing at all. He has watched pride sit on a throne and refuse even the space a needle's tip might claim. He has let kings stare into divinity and still choose stubbornness. Now the roads out of Hastinapura are bright with afternoon dust. The city walls bake in the heat. Chariot wheels grind over stone, then over packed earth. The smell is dry grass, horse sweat, sun-warmed leather, and the faint sweetness of crushed neem leaves under hoof. Behind him, the capital shrinks into haze. Beside Krishna rides Karna. Not in court now, not under hundreds of eyes, just the two of them, moving beyond the noise, where truth can be laid down without interruption. You can almost feel the difference in the air. In the court, every word had to wear ornaments. Out here, in the pale gold light, words come dressed more plainly. Karna sits tall in his chariot. He always does. There is a way he holds himself that seems carved out of resistance. Chin set, shoulders steady, armor catching the sun in warm, hard flashes. The earrings at his ears burn like little suns of their own. Dust settles on his cloak, and still he looks royal, though half the world spent years telling him he had no right to stand among kings. That sort of insult sinks deep. It does not come out easily. Krishna turns to him and speaks without softness, but not without kindness. He tells Karna what has been hidden since the day he was born. He tells him that he is not the son of a charioteer by blood. He tells him he is Kunti's firstborn, the eldest son of Pandu's line, older than Yudhishthira, older than Bhima, older than Arjuna, the first fruit of that troubled house. The wind moves through the long grass beside the road. For a moment, even the horses seem quieter. Karna listens. That is one of the remarkable things about him. He does not flare immediately. He does not laugh it away. He does not demand witnesses and scrolls and a room full of old women to confirm the birthmark. He hears it. He takes it into himself. And inside him, something old and aching shifts. You are close enough now to feel the weight of this moment. All those years of being looked at sideways, all the taunts about birth, all the doors opened late or shut outright, and now this, now the locked chamber at the center of his life opens in a single turn. Krishna does not stop there. He offers Karna another future. Come over now, he says, in the only way such a thing can be said, without ceremony. Leave Duryodhana. Join your brothers. Take your rightful place. The throne could be yours. The others would bow to you as eldest. Draupadi would stand beside the five as before, and you among them, not as rival, but as brother. The war might end before it begins. The wound might close. The world might yet step back from the cliff. It is an enormous offer. Kingdom, legitimacy, family, vindication, everything Karna was denied, laid before him at once. And the terrible part is this. It is not a trick. It is real. The afternoon heat presses against the skin. Cicadas rasp from thorn trees. The road ahead shimmers. You can taste grit on your tongue, and beneath it, the strangeness of standing so near a future that almost happened. Karna closes his eyes for a breath. When he opens them, they are clear. He tells Krishna he already suspected something. Not all of it perhaps, but enough to know that fate had tied strange knots around his birth. He says the truth does not change the road he has walked. Adharata raised him. Radha loved him. Their hands fed him, clothed him, soothed him. Those bonds are not dissolved by royal revelation, however shining. A mother's secret arriving late does not erase the parents who stayed. And then he comes to the harder knot. Duryodhana. Karna says the Kuru prince saw him when others would not, when he was mocked in the tournament ground, when great men asked his lineage before they would measure his skill. Duryodhana gave him honor, gave him a kingdom, gave him friendship in broad daylight. Not pity, not careful tolerance, friendship. That gift had settled deep in Karna's life, deep enough to rule him. Karna says he will not betray the man who lifted him up when the world kept its foot on his neck. There it is. No raised voice, no grand vow with trumpets behind it. Just loyalty, plain and final. You feel the ache of it because Krishna does too. He knows what sort of man answers like this. Not a coward, not a fool, exactly. A man bound by gratitude so fiercely that he will walk into ruin rather than step over the hand that once helped him stand. Krishna warns him anyway. He tells Karna what lies ahead if he remains where he is. Great warriors will fall. The earth will drink too much grief. The Kaurava side is already leaning toward its end. Stay there and you fall with it. Come away and much can still be saved. Karna listens again. The sunlight on his armor is almost too bright to look at. It throws gold against the dusty afternoon until he seems made of heat and stubbornness. Then he answers with the calm of a man who has counted the cost and accepted the bill. He says he knows the Pandavas are likely to prevail so long as Krishna stands with them. He knows omens have turned dark. He knows the old order is cracking. Still, he will stay. He asks only that Krishna keep this secret until after the war begins. If Yudhishthira learns the truth now, he might lay down his claim. He might surrender everything to the elder brother newly found. Karna will not have that. He will not win a kingdom this way, by arriving late to his own name and watching another man give up what he suffered to regain. There is pride in that, and shame, and a strange, severe kind of nobility. Human hearts can break in 20 directions at once and still keep their posture. Krishna studies him. Perhaps he sees the boy in the basket, the youth at the tournament, the man who gave away riches until the poor thought sunrise wore his face, the warrior whose anger toward Arjuna hardened year after year like fired clay. Perhaps he sees all of it together. At last, he lets the offer rest. No more persuasion. Just a grave stillness between them. The kind that comes when two people understand each other completely and cannot help one another at all. The wheels keep turning. A flock of white cranes lifts from a marsh beyond the road, slow and startled, their wings flashing in the light. The smell shifts as they pass a patch of water. Mud, reeds, warm rot, then back to dust and sun. The horses snort, tossing foam from their bits. Before they part, Karna makes one request. He asks Krishna not to hate him. Not in those exact words, perhaps, but near enough. He asks to be remembered fairly. He says he goes where loyalty drives him, though he knows it leads toward darkness. He will fight. He will not turn away from Arjuna. Their meeting is fixed now. One of them will remain. One will fall. This much, at least, has become clear. Krishna accepts what cannot be changed. Then the two men part on the road. One returns to the camp of the Pandavas, carrying a sorrow he expected and still feels. The other rides toward the Kaurava host, the secret of his birth burning quietly inside him like a coal hidden under ash. Evening comes. The sky loosens from gold into copper, then into a bruised violet above the fields. Smoke rises from village cook fires in blue strands. Somewhere a conch sounds for twilight worship. Somewhere a child laughs because children are rude enough to keep playing while kingdoms collapse. And in another part of the city, in another chamber where sleep will not come, Kunti decides what she must do. Night passes slowly for her. You can imagine it too easily. A lamp guttering low, the smell of sesame oil and old silk, curtains breathing with the faintest wind, her attendants dismissed, her hands resting still, then clenching, then still again. Outside, distant hoofbeats now and then, a guard's spear butt tapping stone, the half-heard calls of night watchmen carrying across courtyards. She has lived long enough to know the shape of consequences. She knows war is coming. She knows one of the greatest warriors on the opposing side is her own son, hidden from the world by her silence. She knows Krishna has spoken to him. She knows silence now is no longer restraint. It is surrender. So before dawn, she rises. The morning is cold in that surprising northern way, where even after long heat, the hour before sunrise can slide a chill hand under your shawl. The sky is grey pearl. Mist hangs low over the ground. Dew darkens the grass. The palace seems bleached of color, all stone and shadow and dim torch stubs giving up their last smoke. Kunti leaves quietly. No royal procession, no umbrellas, no drums, just a mother going to the river. You go with her in that pale hour when even birds have not fully committed to the day. Sand is cool beneath your feet. Wet reeds brush your ankles. The smell is river mud, lotus root, clay, and the faint, clean bite of morning water. Somewhere nearby, someone is already chanting prayers. Somewhere farther off, a cart axle complains like an old man rising from bed. At the riverbank, Karna stands facing the east. He has come for worship. Of course he has. Son of the sun, though he did not know it openly for most of his life, he still turns toward dawn, as if his blood remembers. He stands in the shallows or near them, palms lifted, body quiet, attention fixed. The first line of light is beginning to form at the edge of the world. His armor glows before the sun fully rises, not brightly yet, more like a promise. Kunti waits until he has finished. That waiting matters. Even now she will not interrupt prayer. Even now there are forms to honor while life tears around them. The river moves with a soft, constant sound as if silk were being drawn slowly over stone. Fish disturb the surface in little circles. A heron steps through the reeds with the seriousness of a priest. You can feel the cold damp in the hem of your garment and hear your own breath more loudly than usual, because this is one of those moments when the world seems to lean in. Then she speaks. She tells him who she is. Not queen, not mother of the Pandavas, not first. First, simply the woman who brought him into the world. There is no easy way to say such a thing. No arrangement of words can make up for years. Karna turns. For a heartbeat, dawn and disbelief meet on his face together. Kunti comes closer. She tells him of her youth, of the boon that summoned a god too soon, of the child born blazing and impossible, of her fear, her unmarried shame. the terror that wrapped around her judgment like a snake. She tells him how she placed him in a basket and let the river bear him away. She tells him what no son should have to hear, and no mother should ever have to confess beside moving water while armies gather. The sun begins to rise. Light spreads over the river in trembling sheets of gold. You can see it on Karna's earrings, on the edge of his cheek, on the wet fringe of reeds at his feet. His face hardens, then softens, then hardens again. That is grief sometimes, not clean tears, just expression unable to choose one shape. Kunti pleads with him, "Come to your brothers, come as the eldest, let this war shrink before it blooms." She tells him he was born for greatness among them, not against them. She speaks of Yudhishthira's gentleness, Bhima's force, Arjuna's brilliance, Nakula and Sahadeva's devotion. She speaks as mothers do when they begin arranging a home in words before anyone has agreed to live there. You can hear the hunger in it, not only for peace, for repair, for one impossible chance to gather all her sons under one roof before the storm breaks. The river keeps moving. It does not pause for revelations. Karna listens without interrupting for a long time. Mist burns away from the far bank. Daybirds begin at last. A kingfisher dives and rises with silver flashing in its beak. The world is indecently beautiful this morning. That is often how sorrow arrives, in perfect weather. When Karna answers, his voice carries no cruelty. That almost makes it worse. He tells Kunti she has spoken too late. He does not spit the words. He lays them down like stones. He says a mother who abandoned him at birth cannot claim him now only because war has made his strength useful. He says he has belonged for years to the house that fed him, named him, and stood by him. Adhiratha and Radha are his parents in love, if not in blood. Duryodhana is his friend in action, not merely in sentiment. He cannot cross the field now and pretend the last lifetime did not happen. You are standing there in the wet grass, feeling exactly how trapped everyone is. Kunti by shame and hope, Karna by loyalty and old hurt, the morning by its own terrible beauty. He says more. He tells her he does not blame her fear as a girl, but he cannot let that fear govern him now. If he abandons Duryodhana on the eve of war, the whole earth will call him faithless. Worse, he himself will know it. He would rather fall keeping faith than live wrapped in convenience. The throne offered through blood cannot equal the bread eaten in another man's house, the hand taken publicly when all others withdrew theirs. There is no boasting in him now, only decision. Kunti's face changes as she hears it. Some hope leaves, not all at once. Hope is stubborn too. It drains slowly like water from a cracked pot. Still she begs, if not for her, then for Dharma. If not for blood, then for mercy. If he will not join the Pandavas, let him spare them. Let her not lose everything. Let the river that once carried him away carry back at least one kindness. Karna looks east. The sun is above the horizon now, full, round, steady. Warmth begins to touch the skin at last. The chill lifts from the reeds. The first real gold of morning settles on his armor until he seems wrapped in his father's gaze. Then he grants her what he can. He says she will still have 5 sons. It is a hard comfort, a comfort made of arithmetic and destiny. He tells her he will not seek the lives of Yudhishthira, Bhima, Nakula, or Sahadeva. Against them, he will hold back that final claim. But Arjuna is different. Between them, the road has narrowed too far. Rivalry, insult, oath, pride, and warrior's fire have bound them together like 2 ends of the same tightened cord. They must meet. One will bring down the other. That cannot be softened now. Kunti hears it, a mother measuring loss before it comes. The line hangs in the morning air with the cry of riverbirds above it. 5 sons, always 5. But not the same 5 she dreamed of holding. She steps nearer then, and for a moment there is no politics left, no banners, no dynasties, no famous names, only a mother and the son she left to water and chants. She blesses him. What else can she do? Perhaps her hand lifts toward his head. Perhaps it trembles. Perhaps she cannot quite touch him at first, because the years between them have texture, and it is rough. But at last some gesture passes, a blessing, a touch, a look held longer than either can bear comfortably. You can feel the damp air warming around them, smell sun on wet clay now, and riverweed, and the faint metal tang of armor heating with the day. Somewhere behind them, someone beats clothes against a stone. Somewhere cattle bells begin. Ordinary morning noises return, one by one, shamelessly, as if the heart of a mother has not just cracked open at the bank. Karna bows, not like a child who has come home, more like a man honoring a truth too late discovered. He tells her to keep the meeting secret. He does not want the others shaken by it before the battle. He does not want Yudhishthira burdened, or Arjuna altered, or Bhima split between rage and pity. Let the war come as it must. Let this remain between them until time has done its work. Kunti agrees because there is nothing else left to agree to. Then they part. It is one of the loneliest departures in the whole epic. No one watching from a terrace, no conch sounding, no garlands, no miraculous reversal. Just 2 figures separating along a riverbank while the sun climbs higher and the day gets on with itself. Karna walks back toward the camp. His footprints darken the sand and then disappear where the ground dries. The armor on his body shines more fiercely now. You would think light meant protection. Sometimes it only makes the chosen path easier to see. Kunti remains by the water a little longer. Perhaps she watches him until distance blurs him into brightness. Perhaps she looks down at the same river that once carried him away in a basket and thinks how rivers are merciless in their obedience. They do not return what they are given simply because the giver regrets it. When at last she turns back, she is very still. That is not peace. It is what remains after pleading fails. By noon, the camps will be busy again. Smiths will hammer. Messengers will arrive dusty and irritable. Kings will argue over precedents and provisions as if the world were not already sharpened to a point. Horses will need rubbing down. Elephants will need water. Somebody important will complain about the grain. Civilization always keeps its small inconveniences right beside catastrophe. It's almost impressive. But this morning, by the river stays. It stays in Karna like a wound made of tenderness. It stays in Kunti like a prayer unanswered, but not unheard. And if you stand there a little longer in your mind, you can still feel it. The cool mud underfoot, the first warmth of sun on wet reeds, the hush after impossible words have finally been spoken. No one is confused. No one lacks understanding. The truth has arrived in full. Still, nobody turns back. The river goes on flowing. The light climbs, far away, on the plain that waits for everyone. Standards are being raised into the wind. After the riverbank confessions, there is nothing left but preparation. Kurukshetra begins to change before any warrior does. First come the surveyors and servants, The men with ropes, pegs, chalk, and tired expressions. They walk the sacred plain measuring distances with practical misery, as if they are laying out a festival that has gotten badly out of hand. Trenches are marked, roads between camp lines are cleared, water points are claimed, spaces are assigned for elephants, horses, chariots, cooks, priests, physicians, armorers, kings, and kings who insist on being treated as slightly more important than other kings. The land is still open and wide, dry grasses bend under the wind, dust lifts in pale veils. But already the plain has begun to wear the shape of war. You can smell it before you see its full spread. Trampled earth, horse sweat, leather, oil, fresh-cut wood, and the steady comfort of cooking rice, trying its best to pretend this is ordinary. It is not ordinary. From every road, armies keep arriving. Long files of infantry come first, feet grey with dust, shields strapped across their backs. Then chariots creak in, with banners furled against the wind. Then elephants, slow and solemn, with bells at their throats and painted foreheads, now dulled by travel. Their mahouts pat them and murmur to them, as if soothing very large, very moody relatives before a wedding. Behind them all come camp followers, merchants, water carriers, priests, musicians, washermen, smiths, grain wagons, spare wheels, medicine chests, and enough cooks to feed a moving city. The cooks, by the way, are not impressed. One royal kitchen on the Kaurava side spends half a day arguing over sesame, clarified butter, and who exactly promised an extra cart of lentils. On the Pandava side, another kitchen discovers that 3 visiting kings have each brought their own preferred spice mixtures, and all of them are deeply offended by the others. Civilization trembles. Meanwhile, the war waits patiently. The conches begin before dawn and continue all day. Not battle calls, testing, a long low blast from one quarter, a sharper answer from another. Drums thud while leather is tightened. Archers examine bowstrings with the concentration of jewelers. Sword edges catch the light. Spearheads lie in neat rows like cold silver reeds. You stand at the edge of a chariot line and feel the ground shiver as horses toss their heads. Their manes smell of dust and soap and hot hide. Grooms run brushes over their flanks and check harness buckles again, then one more time for luck. No one wants to admit how much depends on one stubborn strap. In the Kaurava camp, the great matter rises at once. Who will command? So many kings have answered Duryodhana's call that the camp gleams with rival pride. Standards rise in every direction. Cobra, lion, boar, sun, tree, swan, crescent, bull. Armor flashes. Courtiers move carefully. Everyone is allied. Everyone is touchy. It is a miracle no one has started a war inside the war. But one name stands above the rest. Bhishma, old Bhishma, son of the river, white-haired and terrible, still straight-backed, still carrying that grave, untouchable authority that makes younger men lower their voices without realizing it. When he enters the assembly, male whispering softly, the room settles around him like cloth around a pillar. Duryodhana asks him to lead. Bhishma agrees. He does not pretend enthusiasm. He knows exactly what this means. He knows whom he faces across the field. But he has bound himself to the Kuru throne for so long that the chain has become part of him. So he takes command of the Kaurava host, and the camp exhales as if one mountain has agreed to stand in front of another. Then the next tension arrives. Karna. He is there in bright armor, restless as a drawn bow, with that old fire in him, and the fresh ache of everything he now knows. He has no intention of being small. He has not spent a lifetime swallowing insult to become modest at the edge of destiny. But Bhishma does not hide his opinion of him. He speaks of Karna's pride, of his harsh tongue, of boastfulness larger than results. It is an old wound between them, polished by years. Karna hears every word. The air in that assembly gets very still. You can almost feel the heat on your skin, trapped under armor, trapped under rank, trapped under all the things men refuse to forget. Karna answers with equal force. He makes it plain that he will not fight under Bhishma's command while the elder leads and doubts him. If Bhishma wants the field, Bhishma may have it. So the arrangement hardens. Bhishma will command the Kaurava army. Karna will stand aside until Bhishma falls. Just like that, one of the mightiest warriors in the camp becomes a waiting storm, pacing beyond the first thunder. Duryodhana must accept it. What else can he do? He has gathered lions and now must stable them together. It turns out kings and heroes are not easy livestock. Still, the old prince of Hastinapura makes the best display possible. Honors are paid. Rituals are performed. Bhishma is installed as commander with all due grandeur. Conches sound, drums roll, priests chant blessings over weapons that will soon be lifted against kin. The smoke of sacrifice rises into a hard blue sky. Across the field, the Pandava camp hears the thunder of those ceremonies and answers with movement of its own. Their lines spread around the sacred plain near the Hiranvati. Pavilions rise in ordered rows. Standards are lifted. Watchfires are assigned. Guard rotations begin. Grain is counted, recounted, and immediately found to be somehow insufficient for the appetites of men who have spent years in forests and now eat like returning legends. Bhima walks the camp like a storm given legs. You know, when he has passed, because men straighten and then pretend they were always standing that way. His mace hangs near him like an argument no one wants to lose. He says little. He does not need to. Impatience comes off him like heat from sun-baked stone. Arjuna is different. He moves through the camp with quieter force, checking chariots, speaking to captains, pausing with Krishna over routes, formations, distances. He carries stillness the way other men carry weapons. The Gandiva rests near him, and even at rest, it seems alert. Yudhishthira goes where kings and commanders gather, not to boast, not to threaten, but to steady. He receives allies, confirms provisions, hears reports, orders fairness in allotments, and somehow still remembers that men need shade, water, and decent grain before they can discuss glory. There is something almost tender in it. A righteous war, yes, but also latrine placement. That too is kingship. You walk through the Pandava camp at sunset and see how immense it has become. Fires bloom one by one, smoke curls upward, priests murmur evening prayers, armor is unbuckled, then polished, then laid close by for the morning. Scribes crouch under lamplight, writing messages to homes that may never receive them. The smell is thick and human now. Ghee, lentils, damp canvas, oil, sweat, trampled grass, smoke, incense, horse lines nearby, elephant yards farther off with their warm grassy musk. A flute starts somewhere and stops almost at once, as if the player remembered where he was. The scale of both armies is hard to hold in one mind. If you climb a rise at dusk, you can see only portions of it at first. A rank of banners here, a moving dust cloud there. The glint of spear points beyond that. Fires in clusters, wagon circles, elephant shadows, horse lines that seem to go on forever. The earth itself looks occupied. Men speak in numbers because the truth is too large otherwise. Akshauhinis, divisions, wings, reserves, vanguard, rear guard. But numbers do not carry the sound. The sound is what tells you. Conches rising from one side and answered by another. Wheels grinding stone, tethered horses stamping all night, elephant bells knocking softly in the dark, hammer on rivet, priests chanting by firelight, a sudden burst of laughter from soldiers who have reached the dangerous stage of cheerfulness. Then quiet again, not peace, just waiting. In the Kaurava camp, Bhishma begins arranging the army like a master of an old and terrible game. Not with haste, never haste. He places divisions, assigns kings, decides who stands in front, who supports, who wheels from the flank, who guards the vulnerable lines. Drona has his place, Kripa has his, Salya, Sakuni, Jayadratha, the sons of Dhritarashtra, all are fixed into the shape of the coming days. Duryodhana moves among them, armored, eager, burning with the energy of a man who has chosen his cliff and intends to sprint. He looks at the vast host assembled for him and draws strength from the sight. 11 mighty divisions, a sea of standards, enough iron, leather, fury, and ambition to make any prince feel invincible for at least an afternoon. And nearby, not far, Karna remains apart from the first command. That absence has its own shape. Some men whisper about it while adjusting quivers. Some pretend not to notice. Some notice very loudly in complete silence. Karna bears it with that familiar mixture of pride and injury, bright as a blade in sun. Night falls over both camps. This is the hour when boasting grows softer. You move through the darkness and see what daylight hides. A young soldier from Matsya rubs oil into his bow and tells 2 friends he is not afraid. He repeats it often enough that eventually everyone kindly ignores him. An older warrior from Panchala sits cross-legged beside a small lamp and recites a prayer to Agni under his breath. A charioteer checks the wheels by touch in the dark, fingers moving over wood and metal as lovingly as if he were touching the face of a child. Near the elephant lines, mahouts sleep against their great companions' legs. The animals breathe deep and slow, warm as small hills. Their bells give little dreamy knocks when they shift. You smell wet rope, hay, dung, warm hide, and night-blooming jasmine drifting absurdly from somewhere beyond the camp perimeter. Even now, flowers continue with their own priorities. In a row of tents, men write home. Some dictate because their hands are better with spears than script. Some keep it simple. Blessings to parents, remembrance to wives, instructions about grain, a request that the old mango tree near the western wall be cared for. One asks that his son be taught to string a bow. Another changes his mind, scratches it out, and asks that the boy learn music instead. A little farther on, a prince from a smaller allied house cannot sleep because the pillow is too thin, the camp too noisy, and the entire future too near. His attendants suffer nobly. War, apparently, remains inconvenient. Across the plain in the Kaurava camp, the same night work continues. Men clean armor. Men gamble softly with shells and nuts because apparently one grand family catastrophe at dice was not enough warning for anyone. Men mutter charms. Men stare into coals. Men remember courtyards, monsoon roofs, mothers' hands on their heads, wives turning to look back from doorways. Fear is everywhere, but it wears costumes. Some wear confidence, some wear anger, some wear busyness so energetic it deserves a reward. You stand between rows of sleeping chariots and feel how the air has changed. Cooler now, less dust, stars overhead, sharp and remote. The watch calls carry across the plain from camp to camp. Names of hours, names of posts, the answering cry of gods in the distance, and always that sense of nearness, not just enemies, kin, teachers, cousins, friends of childhood, men who once sat in the same hall at feasts, men who know each other's strengths, each other's tempers, each other's scars. Morning will ask them to forget none of it and still advance. Before dawn, rituals begin. Priests on both sides feed clarified butter to fire. Mantras rise with sparks. Warriors bathe. White garments are changed for armor. Tilaka marks are set on foreheads. Amulets are tied. Horses are harnessed while the eastern sky is still grey. You can hear metal buckles click in the half-dark. Hear the low murmur of men speaking to gods they have not addressed properly in months. Hear conches tested once more, then held ready. On the Kaurava side, Bhishma mounts his chariot beneath the great standard of the palm tree and stars. His white beard stirs in the early wind. Armor gleams pale. He looks less like an old man than like winter itself, deciding to go to war. Around him gathered the kings of that vast host, Drona stern and composed, Kripa cool-eyed, Duryodhana bright with restless resolve, Dushasana eager, Shakuni watchful, Salya splendid, Jayadratha severe, line after line extending beyond easy sight. On the Pandava side, their own array takes shape. Yudhishthira's standard rises. Bhima stands massive and impatient. Arjuna climbs aboard his chariot, where Krishna takes the reins. The monkey banner of Hanuman catches the dawn and begins to move in the wind. That side travels through both armies. It reaches the Kaurava ranks like memory returning. The sun lifts, spearheads flash, helmets shine. The plain of Kurukshetra, sacred and wide, now holds two worlds facing each other. You can feel it in your chest, that strange stillness just before everything changes. Horses snort and paw the ground, elephants sway, standards crack in the breeze, armor straps creak. Somewhere a man laughs too loudly and then stops. Somewhere else, another man closes his eyes for one single breath longer than necessary. No arrow has flown, no mace has fallen, no wheel has yet cut the earth in rage. There is only this, the armies drawn up in their terrible beauty, the old men at the front, the young men behind them, the banners, the drums, the prayers, the pride. And between the two sides, a space of open ground, holding the last clean silence the world will hear for a very long time. Everything balances there, on breath, on choice already made, on the thin bright edge of dawn. So after all of that, what were the ancient storytellers trying to tell us? That war does not begin when the first arrow flies. It begins much earlier. It begins in rooms where someone should speak and does not, in promises bent for convenience, in humiliations nobody repairs, in pride fed so long it starts to feel like law. That is the deep work of this part of the Mahabharata. By the time the armies stand facing each other on Kurukshetra, the real choosing has already been done. You can feel that, can't you? Even now, the air before a storm has its own weight. Udyoga Parva lives in that weight. What matters first is Yudhishthira. He's often mistaken for soft because he asks for peace. But this book makes something very clear. Restraint is not weakness when it comes from strength. Dharma is not always loud. It does not always arrive with a conch blast and a heroic pose. Sometimes Dharma looks like a man who has every reason to rage and still sends messengers. Sometimes it looks like asking not for a whole kingdom, but for 5 villages. That request matters so much because it strips away every excuse. It shows that peace was truly offered, fully, sincerely, without tricks. When Yudhishthira asks for so little, he is not shrinking. He is revealing everyone else. And that is one of the great lessons here. Before righteous force can be used, peace must be given every honest chance. Not a token chance, not a theatrical one, a real one. That is why Krishna goes. That is why priests go, envoys go, counselors go, elders speak, mothers plead, friends warn, and wise men lose sleep. The road to peace is walked all the way to the end. Only then, when the door is held open and still rejected, does war become something other than appetite. Krishna stands at the center of that truth. He could have chosen spectacle from the start. Instead, he chooses patience. He enters the court not to dazzle it, but to save it. He asks for justice in measured steps. Return what is owed. If not that, then less. If not that, then less again. He keeps making the bridge wider, easier, gentler, and Duryodhana still will not cross it. So Krishna shows something essential. Dharma is compassionate, but it is not helpless. It bends very far. It does not bend forever. There is a quiet comfort in that, I think. The world of the Mahabharata is not a world where goodness means becoming passive, while cruelty takes everything. Krishna's peace embassy makes clear that one may seek peace with a full heart and still prepare, if needed, to stand against destruction. Both belong to Dharma when the moment demands them. Then there is Vidura, poor, steadfast Vidura, speaking wisdom into a palace that has grown skilled at ignoring it. He is one of the book's clearest lights, not because he wins, he does not. Not because everyone listens, they do not. He matters because conscience matters even when it fails to stop the fall. He says the right thing while the house is still standing. He refuses to bless wrong simply because wrong is seated on a throne. That is Dharma too, not victory. Integrity. Sometimes, the righteous person in the room is not the one who changes history. Sometimes, he is the one who refuses to lie about what history is becoming. And beside Vidura stands Dhritarashtra, a much sadder lesson. He is not ignorant. That would almost be easier. He knows. He knows his son is wrong. He knows the elders are right. He knows the omens are bad, the counsel sound, the future terrible. But love, fear, habit, and weakness have wrapped around him for so many years that he cannot do the one thing only he can do. This is karma in one of its most painful forms. Not karma as a simple reward and punishment system. Something far more tangled than that. Karma here is the long ripening of repeated choices. A silence kept once becomes easier the next time. An indulgence becomes a pattern. A pattern becomes a fate. Dhritarashtra is living inside the house his own inaction built. That is true for Duryodhana as well. By this point, he cannot yield even a needlepoint of land. Not because the land itself matters so much, but because pride has become his entire self. This is where Maya enters the room. Maya is not just illusion in the childish sense, as if the world is fake. It is the deeper confusion that makes us mistake the passing thing for the permanent one. Duryodhana thinks power is security. He thinks refusal is strength. He thinks possessing is the same as deserving. Under Maya, ruin can dress itself as victory and feel magnificent. You watch him cling tighter and tighter, and the tighter he clings, the nearer the abyss. Karna breaks the heart in a different way. He knows more than almost anyone what it is to be denied, misnamed, wounded by contempt. Then the truth comes to him at last. He is not who he thought. He belongs where he has longed to belong. The door opens, and still he does not walk through it. Why? Because Dharma is not simple arithmetic. Karna is pulled by more than blood. Gratitude binds him. Loyalty binds him. Pride binds him. Old injury binds him. He cannot abandon the one man who lifted him when the world mocked him. Even knowing where that loyalty leads, he keeps it. So Karna becomes one of the Mahabharata's hardest truths. Noble qualities do not always carry a person to the right side. Generosity, courage, devotion, brilliance, these are real virtues. But if they are tied to a destructive cause, they cannot save you from the consequences of standing there. And then Kunti. Her grief sits over this whole book like evening light over a river. Soft, inescapable, too late. She is not only grieving what may happen, she is grieving what was already lost long before anyone raised a standard at Kurukshetra. The child set afloat, the silence kept, the years missed. The sons now facing one another because truth arrived after its proper hour. This matters because Udyoga Parva keeps showing that catastrophe rarely arrives suddenly. It is invited, excused, postponed, dressed in ceremony, and finally seated like a king. By the time people call it disaster, they have usually been feeding it for years. That is why this book feels so heavy, even before battle. Its moral work is already complete. The war to come will be terrible, yes, but the judgment of hearts has largely happened here, in the season of embassies and refusals, in who tried to prevent the fire, in who added oil, in who knew and still looked away, in who offered peace without surrendering truth, in who chose attachment over justice. And so the ancient storytellers preserve this long, tense stretch before the clash for a reason. They wanted you to understand that Dharma is tested long before crisis makes noise. Karma ripens slowly, then all at once. Maya flatters people into thinking they're winning while they walk straight into loss. Most of all, they wanted this remembered. Righteousness is not proved by wanting war. It is proved by how long, how honestly, how completely you tried to avoid it. That is the peace at the center of this difficult book. Not that everything turns out gently. It does not. But that nothing necessary was left undone by those who stood on the side of Dharma. The warnings were spoken. The offers were made. The hands were extended. The final threshold was reached in daylight. So when the conches sound, they will not sound out of confusion. They will sound out of consequence. And there is a strange stillness in knowing that. A hard stillness, but a real one. The kind that comes when truth has fully uncovered itself and nothing remains hidden under silk words, royal manners, or hopeful delay. That is also why this part of the epic matters so much for us. It reminds us that the soul is tested in the long before, not only in the crisis itself, in the private room, in the delayed apology, in the advantage we could press but choose not to, in whether we confuse attachment with love, pride with dignity, or possession with right. That is where Dharma begins taking shape, quietly, before anyone hears the conch. And once you see that, this long season before the battle stops feeling like delay, it becomes revelation. It shows who each person already is. Yudhishthira, patient without surrender. Krishna, compassionate without blindness. Vidura, truthful without reward. Karna, noble and doomed. by the side he cannot leave. Dhritarashtra, loving and weak in the worst possible combination. Duryodhana, still choosing grasping even when the whole world offers him a graceful way to stop. So the lamps are low now. The messengers have finished riding. The last plea has already been refused. What remains is not uncertainty, only dawn. And with dawn, consequence. And now, only one thing remains, the long breath before the first sound. Night settles over Kurukshetra like dark blue silk laid carefully over iron. The camps stretch for miles, fires glow low, horses stamp and blow through their noses. Somewhere, a harness ring knocks gently against wood, again and again, as if even metal cannot quite sleep. You can smell smoke, boiled grain, lamp oil, trampled grass, and the dry dust that never fully leaves this plain. The banners do not rest. They move in the night wind with a soft, steady snapping. 100 kingdoms, 100 vows, all tied to poles and planted in the same patient earth. Walk slowly now. Between the rows of tents, men lie wrapped in wool and cotton, though many are not truly sleeping. Some stare upward with hands folded on their chests. Some turn over for the 10th time. Some murmur prayers into blankets that still hold the warmth of the day. Others sit awake, cleaning a bow that is already clean, adjusting armor that is already strapped, checking knots as if one more tug might hold back the morning. From far off comes the call of the watch, a voice, then another, answering it across the dark. After that, stillness returns. In the Pandava camp, the night feels alert but quiet. Lamps burn behind tent cloth. Guards stand with spears grounded, trying to look like men who have always stood this calmly while the world balanced on a knife. Krishna is there, not in a hall of kings now, not blazing with impossible light, only seated in the hush beside Arjuna's rest. The lamp near him burns with a small gold flame. It catches the edge of his cheek, the curve of his wrist, the peacock feather laid aside for the night. He says very little. He does not need to. Arjuna lies down at last, though sleep comes to him in thin scraps. His bow rests nearby, wrapped and waiting. The great warrior, who could split mountains with resolve, now breathes like any other man on the edge of dawnless thoughts. You can feel the heaviness in the tent, the held breath, the strange tenderness of it. Outside, Bhima is not asleep either. Of course he is not. He sits broad-shouldered by a fading fire, looking as if he could glare the sun into rising early out of sheer impatience. The embers paint his face in red and gold. A pot of something thick and spiced sits near the coals, because even on the last night before war, someone still has to think about food. Civilization survives on many things. One of them is a cook muttering that heroes are useless if unfed. A little farther away, Yudhishthira remains wakeful in prayer. His hands are still. His face is calm in the way deep water is calm. But the night knows the difference between peace and effort. He has asked for so little. He has yielded so much. And still the plain is full. The smell of sandalwood drifts from his tent and mixes with horse sweat and cooling ash. On the other side of the vast field, the Kaurava camp lies under the same moon. Bhishma is awake beneath the stars. He does not hide inside rich cloth walls for long. The old warrior steps out where he can see the sky entire. White garments, white beard, white hair bright under moonlight, until he seems almost carved from the pale light itself. He stands with one hand on his bow and looks over the sleeping host entrusted to him. You can almost feel the night air on your own skin there, cool at last after the day's heat, carrying the smell of leather, elephants, and river damp from far away. Around him, the great camp breathes. Elephants shift in chains padded with cloth. Horses flick their ears. Chariot wheels stand in ranks, shadowed circles waiting for dawn. Somewhere Drona keeps his own counsel. Somewhere Duryodhana sleeps in bursts, waking to certainty and then losing it again. And somewhere apart, Karna remains awake. He has stood aside while Bhishma commands. Even stillness can burn, and tonight it burns in him. He sits alone, longer than most men can bear to sit with themselves. Armor catches the faintest light. His face is turned toward the east, though dawn is still far off. He does not need the sun to be visible to feel where it will rise. The grass around him is cold. The earth under his hand is dry and granular. A night insect sings, then stops. He remembers the riverbank, the mother who came too late, the friend he will not betray, the brothers he cannot fully claim, the promise made in the half-light. By morning, all of it will begin to narrow toward one road. For now, he waits. In Hastinapura, far from the plain, sleep has fled the palace again. Kunti is awake. No court surrounds her now, no trumpet, no messenger, only a lamp, a long shadow, and the company of thoughts that know every doorway in the heart. She has sent suns into one another's path. She has spoken truths that arrived like rain after harvest, precious and useless at once. The chamber smells faintly of old flowers and warm oil. She closes her eyes and sees babies, boys, princes, exiles, men in armor. She sees a basket on water. She sees a face like the morning sun. She sees 5 children and then 6. The count does not stay still. Elsewhere in that same city, Dhritarashtra sits in darkness that never changes. He has servants nearby. He has silence near enough to touch. He has waiting, that is all. He cannot see the moon over Kurukshetra. He cannot see the banners. He cannot see the old grandsire watching the stars, or the son of Kunti facing the east, or Krishna sitting beside Arjuna with the quiet of an ocean held inside a man. He hears the night sounds of the palace instead, a distant footstep, a curtain ring brushing a rod. Temple bells somewhere far off, softened by walls and sleeping courtyards. He waits for news not yet born. Back on the plain, the hours thin. The moon crosses slowly westward. Fires collapse into red eyes in the ash. Some men finally sleep from exhaustion, not peace. Others rise before they meant to and sit listening to nothing. A groom strokes the nose of a nervous horse. A priest feeds a last pinch of ghee into a little flame. Someone folds hands toward the dark sky. Someone else presses a charm into the palm and closes fingers around it. You are there among them, walking softly over dust and flattened grass. You hear a conch lifted once, tested very gently, then lowered again. Not yet. The wind moves over the plain and through the standards. It passes over monkey banner and serpent banner, over lion emblems and golden palms, over the crests of kings who came for honor, vengeance, duty, loyalty, fear. It touches them all the same. This is the last quiet before the conches. No wheels racing, no arrows singing, no war cries, only breathing, only the creak of leather, only the low murmur of guards changing watch, while the stars hold their places above the field of kings. A little before dawn, the eastern edge of the world turns the faintest gray. So little light, just enough to separate tent from sky, just enough to silver the backs of horses, just enough to show dew gathering on spear shafts and the hems of sleeping blankets. Kurukshetra waits, and India waits with it. For years the vows were spoken, the insults remembered, the elders warned, the roads traveled, the peace offered and refused. All of that has led here to this pale hour where no one can take another step backward. Still the world is quiet. Still the earth holds everyone gently. And for one last moment, before history becomes thunder, the plain belongs only to wind, to breath, to the soft flicker of dying lamps, and to the immense, unbroken silence in which all great things begin and all lost things are remembered.